My name is Greg West. I'm an assistant chief with the LA City Fire Department. Battalion Chief Robert Wilcox. Rob and I are going to go ahead and make the presentation today because this was our fire, this was our incident. So we get this fire and a lot came out of it. We nearly lost a firefighter. We knew we learned some lessons, but what we really learned from that, and we'll talk about it later, is that the two-year firefighter fell back to all of his training and all of the basics that he had learned about in the training academy 2 years earlier. Our 25-year veteran fire captain was too embarrassed to tell anybody he was lost and almost died in that fire rather than admit that he was separated and had made a mistake. So that really raised our awareness of the fact that we needed to make something out of this. So we're going to start with that today, and then we'll take you through the psychology of survival, and then we're going to go through an analysis of what happened at our fire. We divided into 3 segments. We'll talk about the critical issues, we'll talk about the lessons learned, we will play those 3 clips that take you through the initial setup of the fire, how conditions change in the second clip, and then in the third clip we go through the loss of our firefighter and the what we had to go through to get him back, what went right and what went wrong. Chief Wilcox is going to do most of the talking here because it was his incident. I came in behind him very quickly because I'm so close. He's lucky about that. But he's going to do most of the talking about the actual incident and the critical issues, the lessons learned. And at the fire, I was on the command channel and monitoring the RIC channel. And I will give excerpts of when we were kind of going down the same path, and there were portions along this when the fire he was fighting and the fire I was fighting were completely separate incidents. And so we'll take you through that, and we'll take a couple of breaks along the way, and we hope to be done between 11 and 11:15. So, Rob?
Known each other since when I came on the job as a rookie. He's a tenured firefighter at the fire station I was assigned to. And we've been together for a long time, so we've worked together well. Somehow I've always been subordinate to him, which I'm okay with. And but he's been open to me talk. We both had a very significant response to this fire. I was involved in a fire where we had Captain Joe Dupuy die. I was first in. I was a truck captain then. And it had a significant hit on me emotionally, and then being involved in this again, did it all over again. Greg and I felt the same way, and part of this was, part of the catharsis for us was to produce this program to do something, even though the fire department, our fire department, wasn't real supportive of what we wanted to do, and didn't think the fire that we had was a big deal until the more we looked into it. We found out a lot of different issues. We're going to leave you with 2 points today, and the first one is train as if your life depends on it, because it does. And Greg's going to go through the psychology of what happens when you have an adrenaline dump and you are panicked and you are going to die, and why that will work against you. And that's what he talks about, Dr. Scott's stuff, and it's well received. In fact, that's what we did at the CSFA conference, and we also did it at the FDIC conference. And it didn't include all the lessons learned from this fire that we're going to cover today. So you'll get that part plus the lessons learned. So the one thing we'll tell you is train as if your life depends on it, because it does. Train your people to default to simple methods or simple things automatically, because when you have that adrenaline dump and you're panicked, you won't be able to remember what to do. So if you don't instinctively act in that regard, you're going to be in trouble. Your people are going to be in trouble. We believe in train as if your life depends on it, because it does. I'll give you a business card. It's written on my business card. It's written on the walls of our training center in Elysian Park where I work. This fire was an example of one of our members. The guy helped save his life and probably saved the lives of the rescuers that came and got to him, because he had trained as if his life depended on it, and he defaulted to normal, unthinking action. The other thing we're going to leave you with today, and we really hit it at the end of the presentation, is risk management. And risk management to all of us is like, what the hell is that? And I'll put it to you in another term, is risk versus gain. What risk are we taking? What gain are we going to get out of it? And we're going to have you look at that real hard. Those are the 2 things that we really drive home today more than anything else. Hit it, Greg.
Used to present this at the end. We do it at the beginning now just to set up what Enrique Graciano, our firefighter who was lost, what he was going through. But when you come under stress, it can work against you. And the response your body has to the adrenaline dump or the stress that goes with a near fatal incident puts you in a situation where it's going to be tough for you to properly respond. And I'm going to go through all those all of the responses that go with your body. But the bottom line is that if things go wrong for you in a fire, you have to take appropriate action. You have to take it right away. Fall back to your training like Rob said, and don't wait. Because as you wait, you're closing the window of opportunity for you to be rescued and actually putting the rescuers in a worse situation. Okay, I'm going to talk about a fear-induced response and what happens in your midbrain when you have that fear-induced response and how it affects your ability to survive. The adrenaline dump affects your sympathetic nervous system. That's that fight or flight syndrome. But that adrenaline does a lot of things like without exercise, it takes your heartbeat to over 200 beats per minute, and things happen when that when your heart beats so fastly and there's so much adrenaline in your system. Your forebrain shuts down. Your forebrain is where you do rational thinking, and your midbrain takes over, and the midbrain takes control. Things happen like you lose bladder and bowel control. I'm going to talk about some more things that happen with your ability to make decisions and to act appropriately. They found out a lot of this by looking at, it's funny, the psychologists look at combat officers, and in the Army, when they're doing war games and response, they look to fire officers. So we're looking back and forth at each other. It's kind of interesting. But when you get this adrenaline dump, you can lose your hearing, or you can have intensified sound if you're in the dark. So if one set of sensory organs falls down or isn't effective because it's dark and smoky, your hearing may get better. Almost everybody reports tunnel vision. They go on autopilot, and we all know about that, experiencing slow motion time. If you've been in the traffic accident or you've ever been shot at a civil disturbance, you know that everything goes in slow motion as you're working your way through that emergency and trying to respond. Temporary paralysis, memory loss, or making up things that didn't happen. Sometimes when you're in such a bad jam that your midbrain is working and not your forebrain, you're working so hard on what you want to do and where you want to get that actually becomes fixed in your memory of that's what happens. You remember things that don't happen, and when we get out of these near-death situations or these adrenaline dumps, we have the tailboard hot washer, we have a hot washer, some kind of an after-action discussion that helps cement when we discuss it, help everybody remember what actually happened so we can work our way through it in a debriefing or a diffusing and set in our minds how it really went down. Sympathetic nervous system arousal can actually make you combative. It can make you combative because of the adrenaline. It can make you combative for other reasons. And one of the things it does, I talked about that rational thought. Perseveration is by losing that forebrain ability to think and rationalize. And we've seen it at our nightclub fires where people choose a course of action and they stay with it even when it's not working. They can't make another decision because they can't rationalize that going to this door that's locked and piling up with all the other bodies, they don't come up with something else. They just keep pushing on that door until they end up dying in the fire. And that's an example of that perseveration. One of the of this adrenaline dump and sympathetic nervous system arousal is this thing called memory, focus, and concentration. When you are under stress or you have the adrenaline dump, there's this thing called anomia that we had never heard the word before. But at the incident, when this firefighter reports that he's lost and he's screaming on the radio, we've been through drills ever since they started talking about rapid intervention, and we called them ready rescue teams 12 years ago. But when we lost a firefighter, our policy is right out of the fire scope guidelines. We use emergency traffic to clear the radio waves and then report firefighter lost, down, trapped, whatever, neither of us could remember emergency traffic. It just wasn't there. It took Rob about a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and finally there was a radio message that made him mad enough that he remembered what it was and came up with emergency traffic. But that concept of anomia is something that the doctor, Dr. Scott mentioned that, and we looked at each other and said, yeah, we know what that is because we lived it there. So there's a lot to this stuff. Chief Wilcox now has emergency traffic on the MDT in the front of the app, the Suburban. He's got it in the back on all of the radios. It's on his dinner plate. I mean, it's everywhere.
I made little
so that
touch labels in emergency traffic because again, you're going to forget. We're just as panicked as our victim is. When we're responsible for the fire, you're going to forget very simple things.
Okay. And now what we do on we have carpeted door panels in the back of the Suburban and a little Velcro deal in there that says emergency traffic in great big red font, and then it's got a series of 5 or 6 ticklers of questions to ask whoever's lost. You know, where are you? What company are you on? What was your assignment? How's your air? And things like that. So we've got little job aids to help us now as a result of this incident. Mentally prepare yourself ahead of time. When all hell breaks loose, you will do what you've been trained to do and learn to trust your training. And that's what saved Enrique Graciano's life. That a 2-year firefighter who had just been through the academy and had it drilled into his head about when you get lost, the pass device goes on, the flashlight comes out, hit the emergency trigger on your radio and call for help and let him know. He couldn't remember emergency traffic, but we didn't expect him to. He just called for help, and that's our job, is to come back and get him out of there. So one of the things you can also do, Dr. Scott talks about this autogenic combat breathing, which is just a 4-count of a long 4-count breath in, hold it for 4 counts, breathe slowly through your nose and breathe it out for a 4 count, and then hold it for a 4 count. And when they get snipers, that's what they do, is they go through this breathing exercise to lower their heart rate, to steady their nerves, to go ahead and do their shots. So that helps you, that breathing, if you can remember it amongst everything else. It's a way to help yourself when you're in that situation. And then we talk a little bit about the stress itself and the fact that emergency responders and healthcare expenditures are up 50% more for people who work in high stress. And ladies and gentlemen, we work in a high stress occupation. Okay? Resources available to help mitigate stress and work on behavioral health and wellness. In our fire department, I don't know what you have, for your program, but we've got coverage at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have not only our trained professionals on call, but we have peer counselors available. And they respond immediately to the scene, or they'll meet us back in the station when the incident is over. So we get on-scene support, and then our psychologist will come back in for one-on-one psychological first aid and crisis intervention. And he works through diffusing with groups, debriefings, and like I said, it helps everybody piece together what really happened and give people peace of mind to get the full picture of the incident they went through. He goes through a demob process where he does a lot of training with our people to give them education and information about things that they can expect as they heal from this critical incident. And he is working now with about 40 of our people with one-on-one support and then some referrals through our EAP. And then there's the part about depression, suicidal thinking. He works with people after a critical incident, and he actually works with some of our people that went to the World Trade Center. He is still working with their families for reactions from that incident. So some of it's a long-term fix. When to notify him or look for critical incident stress. And as officers, we know it. You look at your people and you see that 1,000-yard gaze, or somebody who just isn't right after this incident. We've all seen it. You know who they are. And like I said, 10 years ago, we knew the doctor. We had Dr. Boxley back then, and just nobody called him. And since this program, we're getting there. We're getting to where people are calling. And After EMS incidents, after critical incidents or disasters or multi-casualty incidents, we're making the call more and more often. And we're teaching our officers, and again, they've all been through this now, to watch for this parasympathetic backlash where it takes a few days for things to happen. Okay, certain incidents require an automatic response or call out, and we call them out automatically. We don't poll the crew. We don't, hey, anybody here need to see the psychiatrist? We don't do that. We just look at our people. We make the call and he comes out, and it's just like putting your breather on at a fire. We get a bad incident, we go ahead and call for CISM. Okay, I talked about don't poll your crew, and it shouldn't be left up to the individual firefighter. Enrique Graciano didn't ask for the psychologist to come out, but we got to talking about it. I told you we were going to talk about what we did wrong, and here's one of them to start you out with. We nearly lose a firefighter. We know that he nearly died because when he came out, within 30 seconds, we're looking through a door of a market that's wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling fire. 30 seconds. And Enrique knows it too. So we send him over to the paramedics, and they take a look at him. They don't transport him. He changes his bottle, gets some water. We left it at that. We didn't pay attention to him anymore. And come to find out that about 15 or 20 minutes later, he's on the end of the aerial ladder on a ladder pipe, looking down from 70 feet at where he almost died from the Victory Boulevard side of the fire. And he spent about 30 minutes up there before he went nuts, and they got him off the ladder. So we all come back to quarters. This is a midnight fire, so about 5:30 we demobbed truck 88, and he came back to quarters. Took a shower, went to the hospital for some burns on his knees, and then he drove himself home. We let him drive himself home and didn't even think about it. Sent a paramedic captain over there about 2 hours later, longer than that. Yeah, midday we sent a paramedic captain over there just to visit him, and he was a wreck. He was just toast. That's when we got around to calling the psychologist.
The backlash on that too is could have gone to sleep or passed out. And when Greg talks about the parasympathetic backlash, one of the issues is when you have an adrenaline dump like that backlash, that parasympathetic backlash can happen anytime after that incident, not just emotionally but physically too. So we have a firefighter on the end of about a 50-foot ladder with a ladder pipe going. They've had people with a parasympathetic backlash just be in combat and then fall asleep. So that's something that happens in your body physically. To let him drive home alone after an adrenaline dump like that was not a good idea. Not a good idea physically.
Kind of like driving your 60 freeway out here, and the stress of that makes me want to take a nap right now. So, okay, we talked about that. The resistance of firefighters to admit they need some help from a psychologist. The terrible six, this is when, and it's in your handout, some things to refer back to of when you probably ought to be thinking about critical incident stress management. An incident involving near-death, serious injury, or line-of-duty death of somebody in our fire department. MCI incidents with significant triggers, and you know what they are. They're family and kids involved dismemberment, significant losses at MCIs, major disasters is another one. Death of a child when it's due to violence, neglect, or another condition that could have lasting effect on personnel, and we see it with child abuse and kids that have been neglected or left alone around cars and pools and things like that. Department member involved in an accident which causes serious injury or death to civilians, and we've had a few of those of our own recently, of apparatus going through intersections, people turning left in front of us, and the civilians dying. We look at critical incident stress debriefing for the drivers and the members of that company. And then the last one is any incident where the incident commander or the company commander feels that this critical incident stress management team would be an advantage to us and our people. And a lot of time, I don't even ask. I make the call, and they come out, and the doctor or the peer counselors and I talk about it. And if there's any resistance at all from the macho crew, we just take them through a drill. And this may not be a debriefing, this may not be a diffusing, but here's a little idea about what can happen to you in the next few days, because whether you admit it or not, you did go to a critical, very significant incident. So they give them a drill about what can happen with flashbacks and sleeping patterns and things like that. The key principle of this is look out for your people, take care of your people, and they'll take care of their leaders. And that's what we're looking at. For any questions on this critical incident stress, we'll move on to the fire now, and this is where Rob comes in. Like I said, it was his fire. Sometimes I went to the same fire on the command channel. Sometimes I went to a completely separate incident. And I'll talk about the radio. It came up yesterday. The radio plan we have is that we have a channel for our dispatch center. We have a tactical channel assigned when we get the dispatch. When it gets to a greater alarm fire or over the normal amount of companies we would send, we use a command channel. We assign a separate channel for rapid intervention. And then our handheld radios have the emergency trigger button on the top that alerts the dispatch center that they've got a firefighter emergency, and that automatically defaults the radio to channel 6, which is our firefighter emergency trigger channel. So when we are at that command post, we're actually monitoring 5 radios. We have staff assistants, so there's 4 of us at the command post anyway. Sometimes we have a paramedic captain here with us, so 4 of us will monitor 5 radios. I just wanted to clear that up because the comm plan gets kind of complex and interesting when you get to a major incident. And with that, Rob Wilcox.
Thank you. I'll say it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I have to pay homage to my staff assistant, Dan Fiore. And I sound good on the radio, and I do think it's because we have a firefighter staff assistant that we know that other agencies throughout the state don't have the luxury of, but it's more than just a guy driving us around. And the role that they play in the company accountability, the radio monitoring like Chief West talked about, and some of the other stuff's vital. The main thing about the Vallarta fire for us, Vallarta Supermarkets is in Southern California. I don't know if you have them out here. At the time, it was a chain of about 16 stores, or shortly after this fire, they had 15. They're back up to 16, and we'll show you the aftermath of this fire today, what it looks like. And we'll show you the aftermath the day after the fire. And the whole thing we reflect on is we almost lost a firefighter. And like Greg said, 2 months later we found out we almost lost a captain, and we'll give you the details of that. And then we've gone further than that to say the rescuers that went in, had certain things not happened, we probably would have lost at least 1 rescuer, maybe 2, and perhaps an entire rapid intervention company had they got through a door and some other stuff that we'll explain the details to you about. But the way we look at it, that as things went, we lucked out a lot. Things kind of went in our favor in some cases. We made some mistakes, so that lets us raise our hands and say, you captain, and you captain, and you captain made a mistake. And then we'll also point out one good thing. There was some good stuff that happened during this fire, and I'll point that out, especially some of the roof operations for ventilation for us. So that's some of the stuff we'll cover. And again, at the end, before we're all done, we'll tell you that the bottom line is risk versus gain. And I'll give you some ideas about determining what GPM you need and what's traditionally a loser and what's not. We tell you a little bit about our resources. We're not bragging or nothing. I don't care. I don't care if we have 5 engine companies in the entire city. It just don't cut my pay. In fact, I don't care what you call me, don't cut my pay. So we have 47 task force stations, 2 light force stations. Basically, we have 100 fire stations, and 50 of them, roughly, have trucks in them. So our truck-to-engine ratio is for every 2 engine companies, we have a truck company, which means we believe in a coordinated fire attack. Those are fully staffed companies. And a coordinated fire attack to us is hose lines in place with simultaneous vertical ventilation. That way we make it tenable for people inside the structure. We make it tenable for our engine personnel to get in, find the seat of fire, put the fire out. We provide vertical ventilation. It's a big deal to us. And again, the way we show tangibly that we believe in a coordinated fire attack is the ratio of engines to trucks. We have 79 paramedic ambulances, and that's going up right now. We do our own transportation in the city of Los Angeles. In a paramedic ambulance, we have 2 firefighter paramedics on that, and they're riding around in an ambulance. We have some paramedic engine companies, mostly assessment engine companies that have 1 engine. But then we have 49, and that number is going up. We have 49 BLS ambulances, and again, this is a transportation ambulance, and it's staffed with 2 firefighters. And 16 battalions, 3 divisions, roughly 3,400 uniformed people. you're going to hear the term task force, light force, task force, light force, and the reason we're telling you these terms is because you're going to hear it on the radio, and we want you to decipher what some of this means. To us, a task force usually runs out of one fire station. When I said we had 100 fire stations and 50 of them have trucks, those 50 fire stations are task force fire stations. So we see we have a truck company, and we just take a normal truck company with a staffing of 5, and we marry that with an engine company, or an engine apparatus that only has an engineer on it. So that combination is our truck company. We call it, if you separate it out, and I'll show you a picture here in a minute, it's called a light force, and you'll hear that term a lot on the radio. And then as part of this task force, if we dispatch Task Force 3, you'll get all these resources, but we can split them up. So we can take Engine 3 and take them off to the side. So that's just so you know how we operate engine. We have 4-person staffing on our engine companies, a captain, an engineer, 2 firefighters. And this is that light force. You'll hear a lot of light force. We use the term light force or truck company kind of interchangeably, so when you hear that. It has a truck captain who's higher ranking than an engine captain. And then an apparatus operator is, we also call an AO. He's the one that drives the front of the truck, and that's a promotional position, much like the engineer. And then we have firefighters. The guy that drives the 200 series engine, that's what we call 200 series engine, is 290, 203, 210. They're all the engine apparatus that's assigned to that truck with one engineer on it. That's not a fully, it's just basically the reason we do that in the city of Los Angeles is we know there's no water hose or a pump on that apparatus. So we marry these two apparatus together, and now we have the flexibility that truck company can do truck work or engine work. And they go out on rescue runs, or they can go out on a car fire or anything else. The key here is that all of our trucks are tillerable apparatus, and the tillerman of truck 88 or Light Force 88 was the one that got trapped. So we make a big deal about tillerman. You'll hear that term. That's all our ambulances look like that. Some look newer. They're all red now. But if it's an ALS, they staff with 2 firefighter paramedics, and if BLS, it's just 2 firefighters. We send those resources to fires, and they get assigned to a captain for accountability, and they do little odd jobs. They can get utilities, they can throw some extra ladders, they can even be assigned to a company and go inside an IDLH or on a roof and help with that. Some of the terminology you'll hear is OCD, that's just our dispatch. We say OCD all the time, it's the Operations Control Dispatch. Battalion 10, when you hear those radio messages, that's me. That's Battalion 10 has 6 fire stations in the middle of the San Fernando Valley. Division 3 is Chief West, and we both have firefighter staff assistants. You'll hear some radio messages from EMS 10, and all of our battalions have an EMS paramedic captain who supervises some of the EMS resources and helps with EMS incidents. They are part of the battalion chief command team. So when we go to a fire, he can go outside the building and do some recon and stuff for that BC. In this case, my EMS captain was inside the building, which was a no-no. Although when he was inside the building, the lights were on and everything else, but we'll talk about that. When you hear rescue, and on the radio messages, rescue this, rescue that, if it just says rescue, it's a paramedic ambulance with those 2 paramedic firefighters. If it's rescue 800 something, then it's a BLS ambulance. So you'll hear rescue 100, that's a paramedic ambulance. You'll hear rescue 839 is a BLS ambulance. That's 2 firefighters to run around. You'll hear radio messages about Squad 70. That's a hazmat squad. They come in a specialized apparatus with 4 personnel, but they're capable of doing engine or truck work. And in that case, I assign them to the truck. Ladder pipe for us is a clamp-on ladder. It's not pre-plumbed on the end of an aerial ladder. And wagon battery, deck gun, heavy stream appliance. And then the PAR, we'll talk a little bit about a PAR, and that's a personnel accountability report for us. This fire was in September of 2003, happened at 23:23 hours. That's our time of alarm. The address was 16107 Victory Boulevard. That'll become significant later on. We'll talk about how we named the IC, and Greg talks a little bit how we identify the divisions. We'll have a timeline that shows you what, from that time of alarm, some of the significant things that happened in our fire. We're calling this a success story, really, because we were able to make, out of this, this whole training program came about, and we also came up with some recommendations for our department, and we were able to make some significant changes without having to kill anybody. which is very good. Usually you have to have tombstone legislation to get anything done. Somebody has to be seriously injured or killed. And we were really able to, with some success, have some changes be made in our department without having to lose a life. The initial assignment, we have basically two types of assignments to a structure fire. We call it A and B assignment. An A assignment is a truck, 3 engines, a BLS ambulance, a battalion chief, and an EMS captain. Those type of assignments routinely go to single-family dwellings, duplexes, small residential buildings. If we double that, we take 2 truck companies and 5 engine companies, a BLS ambulance, and the battalion chief and an EMS captain. That's a B assignment. That's what goes to commercial reports of commercial fires, large apartment buildings, other large buildings. This should have gotten the bigger assignment initially dispatched to it, but it didn't. Because the people that reported the fire called from a couple blocks away in a residential area. So the dispatch computer recognized residential area, that's where they're calling from. They said there's a fire at Woodley and Victory. Turns out to be a little bit west of Woodley on Victory, which turns out to be a large grocery store. We ended up using 23 companies, 6 ambulances, a bunch of chiefs, assistant chief, and the deputy department commander, which is our Bureau of Emergency Services deputy chief, Mario Rueda, was eventually the incident commander for it. We had a truck captain, was the initial incident commander. They passed command to me, and then when he got there, when Chief West got there, I passed command to him, and then we eventually passed it to Chief Rueda. We'll talk about basic operations that are violated at this fire, and some of the basics we'll talk about truck company operations that didn't go well, especially trying to find fire. We'll talk about engine operations that didn't go well, about not having supply lines or bringing the correct size hose lines into a pretty significant fire. Greg West and I will stand up in front of you and said we did some command and control issues. We had some issues in our regard that didn't go well, and then the rapid intervention. And some of the rapid intervention, at least the company set it up well, but they got snookered. They were given misinformation by our victim. And you're going to see that. We're going to talk about when you're involved in a rescue, potentially your victim's going to be combative, going to give you false information, going to lead you in the wrong direction because of the stuff that Chief West talked about earlier, because they will not be in their right faculties. We had a lot of communications issues, and it'll come down that anytime we've ever had a significant incident, somebody died, it's not one thing that's killed any of our people. It's a series of bad little hops that go on that lead to significant incidents like that. But one of the biggest things we had, especially inside, with some people with some experience, and we all have the same argument that people in our department is the seniority's dropping, the fires are going down, the experience levels are going down. Everybody in every agency will say that. We're no different than that. But we had some people with some experience inside that structure and did not recognize the worsening interior environment. What was happening in there is that lack of recognition of that environment and the fire spread in the attic that was going unchecked resulted in dangerous flashover conditions. We knew that night we'd lost a firefighter. We didn't know until 2 months later when we did a post-incident analysis where we put everybody in a big room, and the idea of that was not to have a critique of the fire. It was still a fact-finding of what happened at this fire. And the atmosphere in a post-incident analysis get-together like that is to have an atmosphere that someone would feel free to step up and say, you know what, I made a mistake and this is what I would do different. Because most critiques any of us have ever been to of any incident, everybody's glad handing and patting everybody on the back, hey, good job, this went well. And you turn to your buddy and say, you know, that's not the same fire we went to, because the one we went to had some issues. And we have really stepped out in front and said, no, we had a lot of issues. But in our post-incident analysis, we had a captain stand up at the podium, none of us knew it, and very emotionally admitted that he was lost inside, 25-year company commander, lost inside, too embarrassed to call for help, and he came out after Enrique Graciano did, seconds after he did, and seconds before that building was fully involved with fire. And then when we did some checking afterwards, we found out that was true. That captain coming forward and making that admission to everybody in that room was the catapult to change our fire department's attitude from one of, hey, this was no big deal. This guy who got lost didn't have a lot of experience, young firefighter, a couple of years on a job. No wonder this is no big deal. And it changed the attitude at that point from that kind of thought to this was a significant fire. That's when really we started working on, I think we produced maybe 58 recommendations that came out of this fire, and most of which we accomplished. We put firefighters, 5 firefighters injured and placed off duty, and one of them was a firefighter that got lost. We had to work at getting that done. We now have the capability to actually put somebody off duty by calling our psychologists and saying, hey, mentally I don't think this guy can work. But that was an issue for us because as officers, we're not allowed to put somebody off duty. The only way we can put somebody off duty is a medical doctor says this person can't work. It took us 2 hours and 7 minutes to knock it down, and we didn't knock it down until we started pumping Class A foam through the ladder pipes. And then $3.8 million loss, which the grocery store has no problem with. Insurance paid for those costs, and they're a lot better off today. You're going to hear messages from Division C. You'll hear me talking to Division C on the radios that we have, on the inserted audios that we have. You won't hear them answering back. That captain's radio, when he got off, you'll hear his initial message from Division C. When he got off the apparatus, his handheld radio was on direct, wasn't on repeat. So none of those messages hit a repeater and they weren't recorded. Everything else was recorded. The initial size up was a fire from a mechanical building, and I'll show you some pictures. My staff assistant drove around to the back side, and I looked at the 2 windows where the fire was coming out of. Didn't think it was significant. Used to work for a grocery store before I got this career, and I was pretty happy I took a different career path. But I knew how the grocery store set up, upstairs windows, kind of office area. Turned out it was an electrical room and a little office area, and we determined the cause of the fire was electrical because their scanners were not working properly at the time. By the way, store was open. The roof size up was significant. My staff assistant drives around back. We look at the 2 windows. Now we're driving it back around the other way. In fact, I tell my staff assistant dinner wasn't very good that night. I said, as soon as we get this thing knocked down, I figured a little fire up there in the office. As soon as we get this thing knocked down, we'll let the companies handle it. We'll run off Tommy's and get a Tommy's burger. That'll be good, kind of sit good right about midnight. Right after I said that to my staff assistant, I get a message from the roof, and you're going to hear it. And it's from the AO. It's the apparatus operator on the roof. Very knowledgeable, experienced AO. And he says, Battalion 10 from the roof, I got a fully involved addict. Give me another truck company to the roof. And I roger him, and then he comes right back and says, you know what, make that a task force. And basically he doubled what he wanted. He wanted 2 companies to the roof. And I acknowledged him again. But that message is the significance right off the bat of how much attic involvement, how much ventilation work that he thinks he has. And talking about this fire is not just in those 2 little rooms, and changed the whole significance of the fire for me as we drove around front. Now, we drove around back in front, parked in the front parking lot for the grocery store, and you're going to see pictures of it. And now I'm looking at a door of a grocery store that the lights are on, and people, civilians, are moseying out. Nobody's panicked, nobody's running, and it's pretty calm looking. And why we went back out front is still a question to me, but it's a good thing that we did. And we talked about the lights were on and open for business. There's a picture we took from the helicopter after the fire. You can kind of see, we say the Truck 88 Tillerman right in the front. You'll see a couple pictures of that. We ended up, this is where Enrique Graciano, we use his name quite a bit. You'll hear his name on the radio. He's been part of this presentation with us, and it's been good for him too. This is Victory Boulevard. There's a Victory address. There's absolutely no openings on the Victory side of this building. Okay? So that's kind of unusual. It's a Victory address, and I picked Division A as the address side of the fire, although there's no openings there. This is the main entrance into the building. If you come around back, there's a large parking area back here, and you can enter into the store down a hallway right here, and it comes through another opening into the building. And then you go by the check stands and go on. That opening is protected by a rolling steel fire door with a fusible link. Because this hallway, when this building was built in 1958, this hallway was not part of that building and was added later on. We'll take you down that hallway. I got pictures of it and some other stuff. This is a breezeway to Victory Boulevard. Breezeway is hard to explain. Back in the 50s when they built commercial buildings, you could walk through here, and off of the breezeway there would be a little barber shop, there would be a little gift shop, maybe a flower shop on both sides of this little breezeway. That's significant because when I show you some engine company placement, one of my engine companies parks out on Victory, takes a line through the breezeway, comes all the way down this hallway, and then runs out a line right here. The fire starts back in that corner. Look at that's the only part of the roof we saved, though. You know why that's not burned out? I had engine companies up there getting water on it. The way they got up there was through a Division C entrance. They went upstairs, they got into it. So we'll take you down some of these things. That kind of orientates you to the building. There's a little drawing of it. The C part is the back, A is the front. No openings on the A side. This is the hallway that goes through that door. This is the main entrance that you're going to see a lot of pictures of. And Greg West will show you some stuff later on, show you a shot of that front door of what we saw when things really started to go sideways. That's the picture of that main entrance off the parking lot. Inside that door, you turn to your right, you go through the check stands. The market was a high-volume market for Vallarta, but it was one of their smaller markets. So the stock is piled high. They had bought some of the commercial buildings right next to their building just for storage. Markets are designed to trap you because when you go in and you go through the check stands, they're designed to let you go buy all the goods that you want to buy and then filter back through their little check stands. So make sure you pay before you get out. And for firefighting, though, that creates a problem for us getting out, and we'll talk about what some of those issues are.
That's what I have. They're there to kill you.
They're actually there to keep you from stealing stuff, but for us, it creates a problem getting out. This is the back entrance, and I'll take you down some pictures. It led to the hallway, and it dumps you out in the front part of the market before the check stand, so you can go through their filters, buy your stuff, and then they charge you all that stuff, and you go back out. But you go through a rolling steel fire door with a fusible link that operated properly during the fire that we never recognized. I'm going to show you a picture of that. Engine 7, which one of the initial engines, went through here, and our rapid intervention company went down this hallway and tried to get in too. And we'll tell you what significance that has. Those two windows is where we saw the fire coming out. That's the upper office. I drove around back, clearly see fire coming out of those windows. The initial message you're going to hear on the radio says, sounds like we got fire coming from a storage building in the rear. The reason they said that is the company that gave that message is coming down the alley, and they see the fire coming out of the one window that's over that little storage shed, and it looks like the fire's coming out of the storage shed, but it's not. As we go down that hallway, there's the entrance. Look at that stock piled up there. There's some soda bottles and some other stuff. As we go down the hallway, you're going to see it's rather wide. As you go into the store, they had a little deli counter. They would make sandwiches there. Our companies routinely would eat lunch in there. And you could sit in those benches, and there's some little kiddie rides and some other stuff that in that hallway made it pretty wide. Here's the doorway. There's that little deli counter you can see on the left side, but that's the rolling steel fire door. And you can see here that it's well covered because they had a little door here, a little hinge door that protected it. Didn't really see it without going to look for it. When they built that hallway, building safety required them to put a separation in there, fire safe separation, so thus the rolling steel fire door went in. Created a big problem for us. Here's the rear entrance where that big arrow's pointing in. That's where the engine companies go in through the backside. They go up those stairs and get to the office area. Again, little office area, little electrical room. This is the view that Greg West and I had from the command post. Now, I told you I drove around the backside. I looked at the fire out of those two windows. We came back around to this parking lot, set up our command post. Our rig's aiming. You'll see some pictures of Greg and I at the command post, but our Suburban's aimed right at the front, this picture of that building. These windows were not open at the time of the fire. Back in a market built in 1958, they were covered with wood, and whatever the on-sale produce was, they had, paper over that saying, hey, broccoli's on sale or whatever. So those windows got opened. After we went into a defensive mode, we got everybody out, then firefighters doing what they do, look for every nook and cranny they can possibly find to squirt water in. So they're up there standing on some carts with chainsaws trying to cut that wood off, and here they're just putting that back up. This sign becomes significant for us because as this building is destroyed slowly by fire, we're concerned of our companies in and around this, and you'll see later on that sign was never an issue. In fact, it goes right into the foundation. But you don't know that at the time. Here's a picture at the front door looking in, and that where those our captains wear orange helmets, where those captains are is right about where Enrique got stuck. You'll see, and everybody says, how did he get separated from his crew? You'll see that if you go a little bit this way, this is like a cooler, a beer cooler or something that kind of sticks out. Enrique turned, instead of turning here, he went a little bit further, hit the wall, and then tried to turn, and he's hitting the side of this cooler. But he's right where most studies say firefighters will die. He's about a 20-minute window after companies have arrived on scene, and he's about 60 to 75 feet inside the building. And that's where most firefighters die, and he's right in that window. He's no exception. Here again, I'll show you is he's kind of in this little alcove right here. It's an open area, which is why when he came down here and everybody turned left, here's the check stands. He came down here, everybody turned left. He just went a little bit too far, then he turned left. And when he hit an obstacle, created a lot of confusion for him, and which is why he got separated and trapped. Everybody says, how did that happen? It's pretty easy to explain there. There's the area of origin. That's how we numbered. I had an interior division, so I had a captain in charge of interior division running 4 companies in there. Greg talks a little bit about that choice of ideas. Ideally, interior division would be responsible for all the companies inside a structure. So they should have been Division D if they came from the Division D side. Division C, we use that terminology. Those are the companies that came in through the back and were working upstairs. That's how they should have been identified as Division D. That's one place in the command and control where I did not do it right. But Division C is an engine company captain, and he eventually gets 2 other engines working with him, so he's supervising 3 engine companies in a hallway. I think, there's some criticism there is can an engine company run that division and still be responsible for the 2 people on his company besides himself? Personally, I think he can, but there's some criticism levied at me for that issue of putting an engine company captain in charge of a division. For us, a truck company captain outranks an engine company captain. And the reason that we picked that truck company captain to run divisions is that he has 5 people. And the engine company only has 2 people. So he's got 5. Then that apparatus operator takes over control of that company while he oversees the division. And that's why generally we pick truck captains. Then the idea we tell our captains, call a lot of chiefs. And it's not that chiefs make the fire go out. Our goal is to replace all those truck company captains with a battalion chief so that captain can join his company again. Our initial company placement, Engine 90 and Engine 39. What happens is Engine 7 is a brand new fire station being built, and it's not built yet, so Engine 7 is housed at Fire Station 39. Fire Station 39 has a task force. Fire Station 39 has an 800 rescue. 839. Fire Station 39 has me. That's where I run out of. So all the resources going into this fire were all coming out of one fire station. However, I run out of the back down an alley and try and get to the street. Meanwhile, those guys scream out the front door. Everybody beats me to the fire. Engine 90 is the only other company that gets there from another fire station, and they get there before I do too. It's kind of their first in. So Engine 90 goes around to the back and asks for water, and Engine 39 takes them water to the back. So they self-place. Truck 39 places himself in the front along with Engine 7. And Truck 39 has their 200 series engine that's doing their hose lay and helping Engine 39 with their hose lay and stuff like that. So basically what I'm saying is everybody places themselves just before I get there. So my first job when I get there, and you'll hear it on the radio, is, where are you? Where are you? I know who's at the fire. I got to find out where they're working. And then we said Light Force or Truck 39 to the roof. This is the initial placement. I tell you, the Truck 39 comes down here. Their 239 with one engineer on it is somewhere back here at the hydrant. And they're actually pumping to 39's rig, and they're pumping to Engine 7. So we use them as a 2-piece engine company. Those 200 series engines will usually stay on the hydrant, and they'll pump to other apparatus. So they're pumping to engine 7 way over here, and they're pumping to engine 39 on the back, and engine 39 supplying engine 90 also. So these guys go around the back, truck company right here, and one engine. And I've got a ripping fire in the attic. And this is all I got right now. It'd take a lot of time to get some more resources there. In the meantime, engine 7, you'll hear a radio message that says, engine 7, come on back. What happens is the captain runs back here and he says, these guys have eaten lunch here. They know how it's laid out. I don't. He runs back here and he knows about this rear entrance that goes over here. And he's already pulled way past that entrance. And he runs back here and he says, engine 7, come on back. So they pull a line through the breezeway, and he comes all around the front. Then he calls me, and you'll hear him say, Battalion 10, engine 7, we're in the front. We got fire in the rear of the market on the other side of the alley. And then he corrects it and says, aisle. And what he means is, there's fire back here. And he's inside the store. And I tell him, Roger, go ahead and enter through this southeast corner, or the southeast entrance. And right after that, his message gets stepped on because he comes back to tell me that he's already in the store and they came in a different way, but I never know that. That hose line becomes significant later on when we talk about rapid intervention. And what happens is that rolling steel fire door shuts on that hose line. And Greg will talk about what that means to Rapid Intervention Company when they come across a rolling steel fire door on top of a hose line. It's not good. For the roof division, we divide up the fire as quickly as we can. So roof division, it's almost automatic for us that the first truck company runs that division. And you'll hear that right after the AO is talking to me, and as soon as he says, hey, Battalion 10 from the roof, we got this fire, I answer back and I say, roof division, roger. I've already identified him as a roof division. Our goal is to divide up the fire, put somebody in charge of those divisions, and then keep our command and control, our span of control manageable. So what the roof division ends up with, light force, and again we use that term interchangeable with a truck company, so it's truck 39's in charge, and he ends up with three other resources there, 2 of which never meet up with him, and 1 of which is not very effective. So I got 1 real good truck company working up there. Division C around the back ends up being 1 engine captain running that with 2 other engine companies that get married up to him. I'll go back. And one of those engine companies, 83s, as they go around to the back side of that building, and they're told somewhat as they're going back there, they pass up a hydrant. And they don't bring any water to the fire. And engine 90 went back there and didn't bring any water. Which is why I criticize my engine captains and say, water, when you're an engine captain, water is the tools of your trade. Do not come to a fire without the tools of your trade. But no one wants to lay a line, right? Because if you stop and lay a line, someone else is going to snooker you and get your spot. And then you're going to be supplying them. And it's that kind of mentality that just makes me scratch my head. Greg will talk about Engine 83's captain and his inability to foresee some future or have a vision about getting a water supply. Because later on when they're getting a water supply, when they realize they need to get one, they miss some very significant stuff that Greg will talk about. The Interior Division, I end up putting a truck captain in charge of the Interior Division, and you'll hear that. You're the Interior Division, and I tell these guys, report to Interior Division. One of the things I think we did well is we tried to manage accountability for the companies continually, and we call that a company accountability report, a CAR, where we're reconciling who has who and who's responsible for what. So even toward the end of the fire, before things went south, I give the Interior Division Engine 88, which is one of his resources, runs right out of his fire station. I give him Engine 88, and then I run down real quickly the companies he has in his division. And I do that with a lot of the division commanders, so they continually are updated. Because I'm sitting there, we got 11 companies working in this fire, keep that in my head. But I still have it written down, too. And then I'm the IC, and then Chief West shows up, and he's the IC. He's not listening to the same radio channel as I am. Our plan is, the way we fight fire is when I get there and before the assistant chief gets there, I'm talking to the resources on our TAC channel. I'm talking to captains. They're talking to me. All our firefighters have radios. Do firefighters routinely listen to radios? Do they talk on them? Oh. Do they, if their captain is lost, like Engine 100's captain was, do they tell anybody? No, and that's an issue. So I talked to the captains. Wouldn't it be nice that the firefighters, if we get a guy fall through a roof, that everybody hears that somebody is in distress? Everybody. Wouldn't that be nice? We gave them all radios, but I only talked to captains, and I talked to them on the TAC channel. And the idea is I'm on the right side of the rig, the Suburban in the back, and I got the TAC channel up. He shows up, he takes over the command channel. Now our plan is that when the BCs get there and replace the captains, that they're talking to him on a command channel. And pretty soon we transition to where these guys aren't talking to me anymore because they're talking to the BCs who are running their division, and those BCs are talking to him, and then I move over to the other side of the apparatus and I take over the command channel for Chief West, and then he takes a step back and starts planning ahead, like we should as incident commanders, of what we're going to need to do next on this fire. That's how it should go. We never got there here. Here we're running our tactic or our strategy, the initial stages of this fire is provide vertical ventilation, find the seat of the fire, get water on the fire. That's our strategy, right? That's what we normally do. Sometime after about 20 minutes into it, when Greg and I start seeing signs that things aren't looking good, we're not hearing good reports from inside, we start questioning what it looks like inside. And then we go to a different strategy change, which is we go defensive mode. And as everybody's coming out, we have one more strategy change. And we don't say, hear ye, we're having a strategy change. We want you to do different tactics now. We don't say that. What happens is we get a firefighter who's screaming that he's lost inside on the radio. And we were just all leaving the building. Now we need to change that plan. We need to get back in there and save them. When we do rapid intervention, and Greg will talk about some of our rapid intervention recommendations that change as a result of this fire. Didn't kill anybody. That's good. But for us and me, one of the successes we had is you'll hear these engine captains, they want to buy in certain parts of the fire, and the truck captain. So Engine 73, he hears on the radio, Division C calling, I need more help back here, I need more help. Of course, I don't hear him because he's getting stepped on by other people, and you'll hear it clearly, I don't hear him. And so Engine 73 says, hey, we can help with back there. And I said, no, you're going to be rapid intervention. I know this captain. I come right back and I tell him, here's your TAC channel, and here's a paramedic rescue for you. Now, that sounds good on the radio when I do that, but again, I'll give all the credit to Dan Fiore. Because I give Engine 73 rapid intervention, he's standing right next to me and he says, they got TAC 12. And then I tell him, you got TAC 12. And then I unkey the mic and he says, and you can have Rescue 100. And he's just set me up. I sound so good, but it's all because of him. Later on, though, some companies later, we added that guy's truck captain, his station commander, his task force commander, to rapid intervention. At that time, and you'll hear that on the radio, they're calling for companies on the roof. And that captain's going, hey, we can go to the roof. We're good at that. And I say, no, I'm going to put you together with your engine to do rapid intervention. Because in our agency, we like to think that if they all work at the same fire station, that they have the same SOPs and they can do a better job of rapid intervention than marrying up two resources that aren't normally housed together. That was a success. There's our trap firefighter. You're going to hear him talk about Tillerman, Truck 88 Tillerman. That was his initial message. That little arrow pointing where the CP is, that's about where our rigs are parked. A little bit out of view of that, but you'll see some video of that. And we're going to play one video. We're going to skip this one. I made copies of this PowerPoint available to your agency with all these inserted videos and audios. It's all included in there. And there's a real neat video we're going to show you later on. They're all included. This version, if you are looking at this, and what we try to encourage is, we wrote this PowerPoint presentation so you don't need us lecturing the whole time. Most of the bullets are not like speaker bullets where you have to elaborate on them. Most of the bullets kind of say what we're trying to say. So you'll be able to sit down with your crew with this PowerPoint, take a few minutes, and go through some of it if you want. If you click on this picture, move your cursor anywhere on that picture, and this is a timeline starting at the time of alarm, and it's not the scale, but it has times of significant incidents that happened at our fire and how long they happened after the time of alarm. But if you click on this, it will play an unedited, unabridged version of the audio where the video doesn't really match, that starts at the beginning of when resources first get on scene, well after we get everybody out and we're doing a personnel accountability. We don't play it here because it goes too long. But I'll tell you that I have 2 video sources. I have a video source from a stringer, and a stringer is a private contractor that goes around in the middle of the night and they shoot TV, production, news, video footage, and then they sell it to the local news channels if it's significant. So I have some of that footage. And I also have a footage that one of our off-duty firefighters at 39s was celebrating the graduation of his brother from paramedic school, who is now on our job, and his dad is there taking some video footage. And you'll see that footage also, especially on the unedited one. You won't see it so much today, but you'll see him kissing his girlfriend and his arms around her. You'll eventually see him standing next to us at the command post, because when I picked him out of the crowd, we need more help. So I got him in there. He was a little runner for us. So those are our 2 video sources, but the video sources, except for the one that his father took, the firefighter's father, at the end, it kind of matches what you're going to hear, but most of the time it doesn't. You're going to see ladder pipes going, and you're going to hear about, oh yeah, we need some salvage in here and some other stuff. We're just giving you a little eye candy to look at while you're listening to the video. But the very last segment that we'll hear today, when our firefighter is screaming, the video that you see is pretty much what we saw, and Greg West will point that out. So we divided into 3 segments real quick, and we'll get to those, and we'll play one, then we'll take a break. Every segment talks about critical incident, critical issues in that portion of the fire, and then what lessons we learned from that. So segment 1 goes from when we first got on scene until we get the rapid intervention placed. In this segment, things are going well. Problem is the alarm, the initial alarm was for a residential area. It's open for business, lights are on, customers are coming out, and we have heavy fire involvement in the attic when we first arrive on scene. Traditionally, in a commercial building with a large attic space and the attic's going that bad, that is not a winner. That's a losing fire. The initial size up from the apparatus operator, the AO sets the tone for the significance of that fire, that he asks for a truck and then comes back and says, give me a task force. And then 3 companies, I told you, didn't lay a supply line. That's Engine 83, Engine 90, and then eventually Engine 88. And we'll talk about them too. Communications from the roof in this first part ought to be in truck captain school or truck company operations school. If you want to talk about how to run a roof and how to do ventilation and how to communicate with the guys down below, if we believe in a coordinated fire attack, hose lines with vertical ventilation simultaneously, we ought to believe in coordinated communications to do that. Doesn't do any good to come in that door and your engine company only comes in about 50 feet when your truck company's gone 150 feet and is cutting holes back over here. So you have to communicate and coordinate where they're working and where you're working. The communications from the roof was excellent, and we'll talk later on about a CAN report, conditions, actions, and needs. And anytime you send a company or you're a company commander and you go somewhere, if you simply communicate those 3 simple things, I'm here, here's what we have, here's what we're doing, we're making progress or not, and here's what I need or I don't need. I'm good, we don't need anything. I tell my captains in the field, I used to work in the field, it wasn't that long ago, I tell captains, when I give you a job, if I tell you, hey, take Division 3, I think this structure fire is exposing another fire on the backside, go take the backside and let me know. I tell them, I want to hear from you 3 times. I want to hear 1, acknowledge where I told you to go. Roger, we're going to take the backside. I'll get back to you. And then when I get to you, I want to hear 2 more times. 1, you're there, so I can know that you're there. And then 2, I want to hear the CAN report. I'm here. Here's what we have. These exposures are not an issue. I don't need any more resources. There's nothing for us to do. We'd like to be reassigned. Same thing, conditions, action, needs. Or conversely, we're back here. We've got a hell of a problem. I need more help. So the critical issues is lack of recognition of the interior companies and the extent of the attic involvement, and only by the radio should have been enough to key them in that something was wrong. And then additional hose lines selected for the interior sales floor were not adequate. Here's the best part. You know, they took in, we have 19th century firefighting tools, right? And we have a 19th century firefighting tool. Anybody know what that is? That's a pike pole, 19th century. Pike pole, right? So we go in, and here's a ceiling, so we pop a hole in it with a pike pole to see if there's fire in there. And then we gain access to it. Well, the truck guys that went in on truck 88 had a thermal imaging camera, a first-generation Bullard, $18,000, and it was bandoliered over their shoulder, right? And so they have the 21st century firefighting tool right there on their hip. But they're using the 19th century firefighting tool, and every time they do this, that thing flaps around, right? It's getting in the way. So they put the pike pole down, take this thing off, because it's all bandoliered on them, set it on a check stand. Now they pick up the 19th century firefighting tool, and that's how they continue to look for fire. We lost that camera, $18,000. We lost that camera. Go ahead, Greg. This is
okay. I need to talk a little bit more about the pike pole and the camera, because the building construction and the way it was laid out is when you walked in from the side door and you're going through the check stands and looking down the aisles of the market, had a T-bar ceiling up above. It had been remodeled after the 71 earthquake, 71, the San Fernando earthquake. And they remodeled, they went through an earthquake retrofit, they dropped the ceiling, they bring in fluorescent lights. But over the produce and over the meat department over on the other side, they dropped the ceilings. And this has got the same thing. This ceiling is 10 feet or so. Over here it's a foot less. Well, they had soffits, hard drywalled or plastered soffits that came way down over the produce. They could put bright lights in, make it look really nice. Same thing with the meat on the other side. What we were looking at from the outside was kind of when you get a wildland fire, you see it's running a canyon and you've got a smoke pattern that's different in the drainage from the grass over here and some of the stuff on the north side over here. So we were looking at smoke patterns of 3 or 4 different fires because it was in the hard soffits. Couldn't get in the hard soffits with the pike pole. They were plastered probably over metal lath. But so the pike pole was working real good in the drop ceiling, and we completely missed the fire in the hard soffits that we would have found with the camera. Big loss. We really missed it on that one. Only had them a couple years, so we, a little slow to change. But everybody's aware of it now. We're getting them on the engines, and they're going in on initial attack. So we got that. Okay, I get to talk about. 2 things, interior versus Division D. We kind of covered that with, the way we do it now is the side of the building you go in from. When we use the fire scope A, B, C, D, where A is the front of the fire, and we go clockwise around B, C, D. We used to use interior division, but knowing that the interior division soup is responsible for everybody in that building, we also had people coming in from C. We will change that now, and what we'll do is where you enter, the portal you enter the building from will be the division designation of where you came from. You may meet in the middle, division, Delta and Charlie may meet in the middle, and they can work it out. We're all adults in there but primarily it's for accountability of when we have to retreat and account for everybody. The Division D supervisor will account for everybody who went in through that division. The other thing where we made a mistake is Rob designated the fire Victory IC because the address was on Victory Boulevard. Victory Boulevard did not have any entrances, and he spotted his Suburban for the command post with Woodley Avenue at his back. So Victory is here, Woodley is over here. We're standing with our backs to Woodley Avenue looking in the front doors. And my failure when I got there to this rapidly escalating incident is I did not take the time to do a good, proper transition of command, and I just fell into getting to work and helping him out and setting things up. And I didn't look at his worksheet, operational worksheet, to see what was the A side of the fire. I didn't ask him what he had designated the fire as. So I'm working with my back to Woodley, thinking Woodley IC. And on the Woodley side of the fire, I'm looking at the A side of the fire. I'm looking at the D side of the fire. So that took about 15 minutes, one, to figure it out, It took about 5 minutes for me to stew on it and say, what am I going to do about this? And then it took about 5 minutes to fix it. And my message to you is, one, make a good transition of command and make sure that you and your captain or you and your BC, or if you pass command to somebody else, that you're working off the same sheet of music that they are. The second thing is, we had to standardize within our department what's going to be the A side of the fire. I pulled out the fire scope, guides to structure firefighting, and it really wasn't clear about access or address being the A side of the fire. And what we settled on in our department is the address side of the fire will be the A side of the fire, no matter where they go in. And then the most important one is I had to swallow hard, suck it up, and say, you know what, in the middle of this fire, we got to fix this. And I had the division soups I think we only had two then. We had a safety officer and we had one BC that was covering the B and the C side of the fire. Brought them to the command post, explained what went wrong, and had them take it back to the companies working on that side. You've heard a couple of chiefs that are talking about two different fires because they don't have it together at the command post. But the important thing was fix it. Just take the time to fix it, and don't hold your breath hoping it's all going to go away and wash away with all the water going out the back door, because it doesn't. And that's a little bit of courage and intestinal fortitude to suck it up and say, we got to make this right. But you do, because if you don't, it'll only get worse. And when you've got a major fire, reduce the confusion all you can. Okay?
That's some of our command and control issues. And then we talked about, if you have a coordinated fire attack, you need a coordinated communications. Any relationship any of us have ever been in, spouses, children, parents, in-laws, anything like that, a successful relationship depends on communications, which is why Greg and I get along so well. But the same thing holds true to any fire. Any emergency we've ever had that didn't go well, your agency or ours, is usually rooted somewhere in poor communications. And then the aggressive initial attack on a fire from a safe area with proper hose lines for required fire flow would have solved our problem. And yesterday I didn't give all the correct information, but here is your rule of thumb fire flow requirements for buildings. And this is rule of thumb, real quick. Anytime you have a building, take the length times the width, divide by 3, and that's the required fire flow for that building if it were going stem to stern, head to toe, floor to ceiling. So we took this building as about 120 by 100, and 120 by 100 divided by 3 comes up with 4,000 GPM is required fire flow for this building if it's going totally. Well, it wasn't. Just the attic area was going pretty good. So we said, okay, maybe the attic area, and this is all rule of thumb, you can do this almost from the seat of your cab or even on the ground. So rule of thumb says, well, just the attic area, and that's about a quarter of the space of this building. So roughly, we need about 1,000 GPM. The only way we'd have had a chance at this building if the initial attack came off with an 1 3/4 line for us is 200 GPM. If we would have backed that up with two 2.5s, two handheld 2.5s, and we use the 1 1/4 smoothbore tip, is 325 GPM. And that's really, for me as a battalion chief, that's what I think a company can put out. NFPA will say 500 GPM per company. In reality, I can expect an engine company to do one 2.5-inch line. If we'd have had two 2.5s with smoothbore tips and another 1 3/4 in there, we would have had near 1,000 GPM. We might have had a chance at doing something with that fire. But that's only if they used a thermal imaging camera and those soffits found it and opened up those areas. So we not only got to find the fire, we have to get access to it, and then we got to get a lot of GPM on it. Had we done that from a safe area, we'd have had a chance. And what I did in my little book, and I did it while Greg was doing the introduction, and I just rule of thumb, I took a building 50 by 100, divide by 3, 1,500 GPM, just round it off. 100 by 100 divided by 3 is 3,000 GPM. So you keep those two little figures in your head, that a 50 by 100 building is 1,500 GPM and 100 by 100 is 3,000 GPM. That's if they're totally going. If you have that half involved, then you need about 800 or so GPM, and you need about 3 or 4 engine companies flowing a lot of water to handle a fire like that. Real quick rule of thumb. And then solicit conditions, actions, and needs if they're not communicated in. This is where I tell you the CAN report, conditions, actions, needs. Now you'll hear a truck company that will do that successfully with the truck company. And from you as company commanders or me as an incident commander, if I'm not getting that from the people I'm sending, I need to ask it. That's where I say solicit. What do you have there? What progress are you making? What do you need? That's solicit condition actions and needs. And then consider Captain D. I was involved in a fire where I told you in 1998 I was first in as a truck captain when Captain Joe DeP lost his life in South Central Los Angeles. And I worked with Joe quite a bit. And after that fire, I got together with my engine captain, and we talked about what do you need to think about if you're fighting fire inside a structure with very low or zero visibility. Today, I will tell you that I don't think you should be in that environment unless people are in there, non-firefighting people. That's the kind of risk we're going to take. But I'll tell you, I don't think in that environment it's worth the risk. And in that fire, that particular fire, we had a lot of issues. And when Joe died, we did a big, significant incident report. And there were a lot of things that fell on top of each other and led to his death. But after that, my captain and I, my engine captain and I, put together this little mnemonic for Joe, and it was things for us to think about in that kind of a fire. One is I'd say, what kind of construction are we under? I would say my engine company, with about 90% accuracy based on looking at the outside of a building, going inside, can guess what kind of roof they're working under. And these structures across the street, I'll bet they're going to be hanging lightweight roofs on that. And just like that, you can tell that fast, age of the construction, type of construction, what you're going to be working under on an engine company. And then what are the conditions inside? And are they changing? And in this fire, the Vallarta fire, we knew conditions were changing. Well, they knew inside. We didn't know outside. But that changing conditions and the fact that progress isn't being made is a huge indicator of something bad. And then the access and what's around you. When I park my Suburban, I always know I can see the front door where the engine companies are going in. But I can only see that until a 54-foot fire truck parks in my way. Now I can't see that anymore. So certainly the people on the roof don't know if you made access. And when we talk about that coordinated communications or the coordinated fire attack, that you need to tell somebody we got inside and we're finding the fire or we can't find the fire. And then the progress or lack thereof, and then the time. You got to be thinking about a time temperature curve, and that's a huge deal. And that's why we say most firefighters will die within that 20-minute time period, because that's a time temperature curve for flashover. And then distance and direction, and nobody does this, and I'm trying to change it as a one-man crusade. But let's say I'm an engine company captain, I'm in this large commercial structure, and there's a fire back in that northwest corner. And I tell my chief outside that, hey, the fire looks like it's in the northwest corner, and we're making our way along the west wall. Wow, and we're about halfway in the structure. Wouldn't that be great? Because when that roof caves in on them, or some aisle of product or something caves in and traps them, I had an idea that they were going along the west wall, and they were about halfway in, and the Rapid Intervention Company might know where to go, and they might know where to send me. We use LCES routinely for wildland fires. We adapted it for structure fires too. Lookout, location, and again, this is where they're all talking, the coordinated communications and the conditions inside. You know, I had 4 captains inside that structure as visibility went from lights on, store open, to smoke banked down 18 inches off the ground and nobody can see squat. And I had 4 captains that didn't talk to each other, face to face. And they weren't talking on the radio either, because you won't hear any of that. And then the communications, when the message came to get out, was not hands on the shoulder. In fact, if you're in low visibility as a firefighter inside a structure, you better be touching your compadres. Because if you can't touch them, you're going to lose them. And you better be real near a hose line to find your way out, too. But we talk about escape zones, and safety equipment. Safety zones, and escape routes and safety zones, and what I tell you as a company commander, as you're going into this fire, think you'll only get one chance at this fire. You'll only have one like this your entire career. Don't screw it up. Think now and train now, so when you do that, get that one chance in your career that you're in a significant fire, and you might not know it, so do it for all the fires. But as you're going into the structure fire, you tell your crew, here's a front bumper of a rig right by the door. Just turn to your crew and say, or your firefighter, your 2 firefighters, whatever you have, when we get out, we're going to meet right there by that front bumper. Got it? Got it. Now you go in. That's your safety zone. It's also your accountability that when you come out, or they come out, and you don't come out as the captain, they can alert somebody that you're missing. or you come out and you lost one of your guys inside, that you'll know it immediately. And you tell people after a fire, you know, accountability is really important. Don't go walking around, wandering around, visiting friends and buddies that you haven't seen for a long time. Stay here until we account for everybody. Because what we do after a significant incident like that, or a significant event, is we do the personnel accountability report. And I want to know right now from the division supervisors that all their companies, with all their personnel, are accounted for. Because when we went through this, Graciano's yelling, sounds like he's from another company. We don't know how many people we're missing. He's getting reports on the Rapid Intervention Channel that they have a trapped firefighter, after I'm getting reports and he's hearing it that our firefighter is out. And we go through about 10 minutes of living hell not knowing if everybody's out of that building. So that simple move will do that. The lessons are transition command. We talk about current tactics and strategy. LCCCESS is something. Whoop, is it going backwards? There we go. Okay, we'll play this. It's a quick 6 minutes and we'll take a break.
39's, your engine is on the backside taking fire attack with engine 90 trying to get access.
7's, come on back. Tying 10 from the roof. I got a well-involved attic in the back end of the structure. I'd like to get one additional truck company to the roof.
Roof division, Victory IC, roger. I'll get you one more truck up on the roof.
You know what, sir? Make it a task force.
Task force for the roof. Engine 7, Battalion 10, what's your location?
I'm making a hot lap, Chief. I'm inside the structure at the front door right now. I'm towards the rear. We got heavy smoke.
Roger, we need to, if you can make access through the front door, the front of the market, on the Victory side, it's on the southeast corner.
Hey, Battalion from Roof Division, I've got fire blown out of 2 vents. I've got heavy smoke on the east and west corner.
Roger, I copy. The majority of your fire was on the, looked like it was on the, that would be the the northwest corner.
That's correct. I got fire showing from 2 vents in that corner.
Roger, Rescue 839, will you get me more ladders up there, and you can also get ladders to the structure to handle utilities.
239 is going low, 7's line. 839, roger.
MS 10 inside. We're going to need some salvage work on the inside.
MS 10, roger, copy, some salvage on the inside.
This fire apparently is contained to the attic area at this time. It is not on the interior of the occupancy.
Roger.
I see engine 90, the fire is actually in the structure. It's in an office section in the back portion of the building.
Roger, copy. You're in the office in the back. You made entry through the back with engine 90? Engine 39, roger. I'm going to have you be Division C for now. Division C, you'll be engine 39 and engine 90. Light Force 90, roger. I'll have you go up on the roof and assist Light Force 39 up there. Light Force 39 is roof division.
Division from 839. Utilities are secure.
Roger, 839. Would get me more ladders to that roof.
Battalion 10 from EMS 10. The fire is spreading heavily in the attic area. We can see it from the interior of the building.
Hey, I'm
Roger.
Roof Division.
Engine 7.
Smoke out of that hole, no fire.
10, can you...
Open the second one right now.
Battalion 10, if we bring companies in the front door of the Vallarta market, make access with some hose line, they pull from the ceiling, get fight the interior attack from the down below.
EMS 10, roger. Light Force 88. You're going to go inside the market with engine 7. You'll be interior division. Light Force 88 interior division with engine 7 and start getting some pipe poles and stuff inside there. Roger, I see. Light Force 88 interior division.
Smoke is starting to bank down pretty heavy. We got some fire in the attic on the other side of the alley. We're trying to get to it now. I mean aisle. But I'm going to need some truckmen here to help me pull ceiling.
Engine 7, Victory IC, Roger. I got Light Force 88 coming in for interior division. Engine 100. I'm going to have you also assist Light Force 88. You report to Light Force 88 as interior division.
Roger, 100 interior.
Victory IC 83 is on scene. How can we help you? 83, standby 1, Division C, engine 39 from Victory IC. Need more help in the back?
Division C, engine 90. We're still getting fire here in this back room. Get the hole opened up.
Engine 83, Victory IC. I'll have you report to engine 39. They're Division C there in the back side of the building. Victory IC from 83 is Division C, 39's in the back.
And that's it. Nothing out of my hole. It's just heavy smoke.
Flasher, repeat your message.
Engine 73 on scene. Would you like to be in Division C to fill out that task force?
Division C, right now you have you, engine 39, engine 90, engine 83. Engine 83 is coming around to help you. I'm waiting for more resources to get on C.
I see from roof. Who's my second task force?
What division you getting? Light Force 88 right now. Correction, Light Force 90. Light Force 90 to the roof with your truck.
Light Force 90.
Victory IC, Engine 73 is on scene, awaiting an assignment.
Engine 73, I'm going to have you start setting up rapid intervention. I'll get you a rescue and a Light Force. I'll have you set up in the parking lot just east of the building.
Engine 73, rapid intervention.
Engine 73, rapid intervention channel will be TAC 12.
IC, TAC 12.
Rescue 100, you'll be with engine 73 for rapid intervention.
Rescue 100.
Up to this point has been setting this up for you. We give you a little break before we get into the meat of this. This will roll fast now. 2 more segments. We'll go through critical issues, lessons learned. It goes a lot faster. What happens now is the attic fire spreads with little communications from the interior. In this segment, you heard the EMS captain telling and the engine 7 captain saying what was going on inside. Now there's a truck captain in charge of the inside, and he's not talking. He's not talking to the other captains, and he's not talking to us. So we're not hearing how conditions are changing. On the outside, we think the next day, I think that somehow maybe the attic area flashed over and sent a zero visibility atmosphere like that to the ground. No, it wasn't like that. They're in there, lights are on, people are shopping, and pretty soon the T-bar ceiling is obscured with smoke, and then Enrique goes out to get a line and then comes back in, and when he left, nobody had face pieces on. We carry our face pieces in a pouch on our coat. They all have breathers on their back. But when he left, nobody had face pieces on. When he came back now, people are donning face pieces. The smoke's banking down further and further. What are we doing in that building? What progress are we making? Nobody's in there except us. So there's some issues going on there. Conditions, actions, needs were not adequately communicated. Later on the next day when I asked the firefighters what were the conditions inside when the T-bar ceiling got obscured with smoke, now get this. It makes the hair stand up in the back of my neck. They said they saw thick black smoke with fingers of fire going through it. Now that's as close as you can get to describing flashover conditions as you could possibly get. God, I hate that feeling. All right, so conditions, action, needs were not adequately communicated, and firefighters later described that thick black smoke with fingers of fire. I placed 11 companies either on top or inside that structure under 3 division supervisors. So span of control is looking pretty good. We should have good accountability. But inside, as that visibility goes down, they should have started getting closer together to one another and then communicating face to face. Hose lines inside the sales floor were not adequate to handle the GPM that we talked about that we needed to have. So we needed 1,000 GPM going in there in a big way, open up the areas where the concealed fire was. That's the only chance we had, and it wasn't happening. And the fact that the conditions are getting worse means that if you're a company commander in that risk management kind of scenario, risk versus gain, you got to say that I'm not making progress here, and there's no civilians in this building. Let's back up to a safe position. I'm not saying give up, but let's put ourselves in a safe position, not 65 plus feet into that building. Okay? There I give you a little idea of what the two hand lines are. What happens is we take high-rise hose packs with us anytime we go into large structures, apartment buildings, high-rise buildings, and it's 100 feet of 2-inch hose, and we use it to extend hose lines when we have to. Engine 7 got snookered when they came down that hallway. They're trying to extend that line with their high-rise hose pack, and there's water's not flowing. Bottom line, Engine 100 comes in the other door, the main entrance door, with an 1 3/4 line, which is our primary structure fire line, and it's a 200 GPM line. Enrique goes back out that door to get another line and gets another line off Engine 100. Well, our transverse beds are not pre-connected. You pull off what you need, and then the engineer breaks it and hooks it up. Well, the 1 3/4 line is gone already with the nozzle, so he grabs the next available size line as 1 1/2 inch, and that's what he brings in. But he saw Engine 7 having problems with their line, so he brings in a whole bunch of line. Whole bunch of line. And that becomes significant later. Okay, I'll get you a picture now. Remind me when I can show a picture. Division C is in the back. Now, Division C and the truck captain, their Engine 39 is running Division C, and Truck 39 is running the roof, so they work in the same fire station. These guys are talking. You won't hear the Division C messages. Remember I told you the radio? But they're talking, hey, I need ventilation. That's the coordinated communications that went well. Then the Interior Division requests an additional company inside with hose lines. You'll hear that phrase 4 times. Now there's an engine company responding. Truck 88 is running Interior Division. His engine company, Engine 88, is responding to the fire as an additional resource that's been assigned. Interior Division says, I need another company inside with hose lines. I didn't quite hear it. Then he comes back and says, I need another company inside with hose lines. And I say, company asking for another engine company inside with hose lines, ID only. And he comes back and says, Interior Division. And I said, Roger, I'll get you another company inside with hose lines. Right after that, Engine 88 gets on scene and says, we're on scene. And I said, cool, report to your truck captain. He's Interior Division. That captain comes into the fire, never lays a line, and goes inside that structure with nothing. No hose line or anything. Whose fault is that? That's mine. That's my fault because I had to assume that he knew what he was asking for. He's in rod. Everybody's listening. Everybody's got heightened awareness on this fire. Everybody knows what's going on. Greg West will tell you soon that that's not the case. So they didn't bring a supply line. They didn't have a hand line. And then the fire is progressing unchecked. And the only real nozzle we got putting any water on whatever they find is an 1 1/2 inch that Graciano brought in. Now what he's done is I try and set up, and here's the check stands, let's say, and you guys are like the grocery store. So I come in this main door, that's where the main door is. I come in this main door, and most of the fire's on the west side, and I go down that way, past the check stands, into the aisles where the groceries are. Enrique's kind of back in there. He brings in so much hose line that as he makes that turn around that check stand, he leaves a lot of the hose here, and it looks like Luigi's Thursday night dinner at the Italian restaurant. It's a spaghetti factory right there. So he's got a whole pile of hose. Not good when you want to get out. So the lessons from this is, you know what? That first in captain, had they recognized that, hey, this is a large building, a lot of fire, should have had the next company bring in a 2 1/2. And for sure the second captain, 2 of them should have got together and said, well, this is burning. This is a big structure. Let's send one of our guys to go get a 2 1/2. Back in the old days for us, back when we went through a lot of fires, engineers used to bring, when we went in with a smaller 1 1/2 line, we didn't have 1 3/4 there. Remember that, you old guys? The engineer would bring a dry 2 1/2 to the front door and leave it there. That was just a standard operating procedure for them. So that when in this large structure, when this fire wasn't working, all you had to do is go to the door and there's a dry 2.5 waiting for you to take in. At least ask for that line later on. Remember, you got a large structure, large amount of fire, you need a large GPM. We don't go to a lot of fires and people are reluctant to make that call. Ensure the interior companies are aware of conditions encountered on the roof. The truck captain talks a lot about, I'm on a good roof, the fire's progressing, I'm getting smoke. Later on, you're going to hear I'm getting fire out of holes. So he's really given good conditions on what's happening on the roof. The guys inside aren't listening to that. They don't know the fire's progressing like that. And the incident commander, I need to reconcile conditions on the roof with the interior atmosphere. So I say, you'll see the pictures, and you saw some of the pictures that Greg West and I were looking at. A huge amount of fire coming out of the roof. I should be asking more than I was about what's it look like inside, what's going on inside. And then just having a company report to a division supervisor is not enough. You got to say, get a hand line. And Greg talked a little bit yesterday, we'll talk again today. Do I really need to tell somebody, get a supply line? You're an engine company, could you get water? No, we hope not, but I do. I got to make sure. So we say, tell the company exactly what you want. You want a supply line? Tell them get a supply line. You want a large 2.5-inch hand line? Tell them to get it. And then constantly for us, it's about personnel accountability. Our 1500 NFPA 1500 compliance is based on the incident commander knows where all the companies are. The companies know where all their members are. And those members have to be compliant with their company commander about what they're doing too. Routinely for truck companies, for us, they just spread out. Scary thought as a truck captain. But you need to know where your little flock is. You need to watch your flock, and they need to watch out for you when you're the one that becomes separated. All right, this is segment 2. When you play this CD, just click on those blank
I still got heavy fire from the air conditioner that's midway, and a little bit of fire from the 2 ventilators, that's it.
Roof Division, I see you said the fire's running in the attic now, and can you give me a location? Are you midway through the building?
Right now we're cutting a hole on the west side, about mid-building. I'm not getting any fire out of that hole. Only fire's coming out of our ventilators right now.
Roof Division, roger.
Line force 90, bring me 1.5 inches up to the roof.
Roger, Division.
Roof, give me the first north message again.
And you're on the second floor back there. Roof Division, I see you copy Division C. They're in the northwest corner on the second floor. Can you give them any help on the ventilation back there in the northwest corner?
Roger, that's where we're cutting right now. We're taking a pretty good beating with the smoke, so we got 2 holes in that very northwest corner right now.
Roof Division, roger.
Hey, Division C, I just got a pretty good hole opened midway on the building. That should give you some relief right there.
Roger. Squad 70, if you can assist, get some more aerials up to the roof on some of these trucks, and then I'll have you go report to Roof Division. That's Light Force 39.
Hey, I see. You ought to be able to see the fire coming out of the hole we just completed. That's the only one we got fire out of so far.
Roof Division, roger.
Here, another company service, another hose line. Engine 90, load the engine half.
That's Graciano, engine 90, load the engine half.
Victory, I see you copy.
Roger, Victory, I see. We're assist with laddering, and then we're going to report to Roof Division. I'm seeing from interior division. We're going to need another company inside with hose lines.
I see that one company's inside hose lines, ideally. Interior Division, roger. We'll give you a company inside with hose lines.
Woodley, I see engine 88 is at Victory and Woodley. Do you have an assignment for us?
I see it, ID.
Engine 88.
Engine 88, roger. I'll have you go inside, in and off this southeast corner. You'll report to your Light Force 88 is Interior Division.
Woodley, I see. Report to Interior Division. Engine 88.
So in Interior Division, you'll have Light Force 88, Engine 100, Engine 7, anything we can help out with ventilation?
Light Force 89 on the scene also.
Light Force 73, I'm going to have you be with your engine for rapid intervention. Light Force 89, I'll send you to the roof. Report to the roof division.
I see you from Light Force 89 going to the roof division.
You know, the truck that goes up on the roof, do I need to tell them to take a chainsaw? Some pike poles, open up the ceiling and stuff. Let's cover two important things. I'll tell you how important that one truck captain's message says. You might see that hole we just cut. We got a lot of fire out of it. We're down in the street, Greg and I. We're looking up at this building. We're seeing smoke coming out of the, a large volume of smoke coming out of the roof. He tells me that now we're getting fire out of one of our holes. So when I see a big blossom of fire coming out of there, I'm at rest. I'm at peace. Because Captain Jacqueline has told me, we made that hole. That's coming. That's designed to do what we wanted it to do. Now, I always told, when I was a truck captain, I always told my crew that if a battalion chief or an incident commander tells us to get off the roof, and the roof that we're working on I think is safe, and he tells us to get off, that's my fault because I didn't give him a sense of comfort that we were in a good place. And we'll get off the roof. But I said, that's not the chief's fault, that's my fault. And that's an example of Jacqueline telling me, I'm on a good roof, and what's happening here is just what we wanted to happen. That's a huge message. And then he goes in, just to let you know, we're on a good roof, we're making some progress. And then I come back, Roger, do you need anything else? Yeah, let me have one more truck. That's conditions, actions, and needs in the best format it can ever be. The other thing is, Truck 90, Engine 90 came around the back, right? They were part of the initial assignment. Truck 90 comes with a 200 series engine that's just driven by an engineer. And they go to the roof, but their engineer stays down there and he helps with the hose laying. Enrique comes out this door and he goes to engine 100 to get that inch and a half line. But as he's getting a line off engine 100, he kind of looks past engine 100. He's not panicked now. There's no adrenaline dump here. But he looks past engine 100. He sees engine 290. This is where your victims are going to wreck you when you're on rapid intervention trying to help somebody. He takes this line in, and you heard him say on the radio, engine 90, load the inch and a half. He just got a line off engine 100. You know where engine 90 is? They're on scene. They're in the back. That's a huge mental mistake on his part that will come into play in this next segment. And that's why our rapid intervention didn't work well. Okay, so I covered 90 and 290. All right, we're going to give you guys a feeling of what we went through. And things are going along good. Okay, the fires, yeah, you need any help? Yeah, give me another truck, do this. We're fighting fire, we're having fun, things look pretty good. But things can change in an instant. And I'm going to give you that feeling of what that's like. Now, this is a little like car commercial that was filmed. And I want you to watch the back of the car because something happened in this car commercial. They're like a little specter or something. Look real hard behind the car and see if you can see it. Okay? We'll just play this for you. Whoops. Why did it play? There. Watch real hard. See it behind the car?
Welcome to our world.
You know, Greg and I love that because we don't watch the screen anymore. We've seen that 100 times. We watch you guys. And it looks like a wave of wind just hit all of you. Feel that feeling you have right now? We had that feeling. Things are going fine. And you're going to hear in the next segment what happens. In this segment, the roof, the sound roof with ventilation holes being cut. Jacqueline's talking about things are going well. I'm down here. Greg and I start to see conditions change a little bit. Greg's going to tell you this video now will match what you're going to see. Huge amount of fire coming out of the roof. And we have firefighters in that structure. And there's nobody in that structure but our guys. So when we talk about risk versus gain, that's where we're saying take a step back. We're asking the division supervisors. I'm asking the division supervisor, can you account for the people that you have in your... Yeah, and I'm getting answers, some I'm not. We order retreat about 26 minutes after time of alarm. Now, here's a strategy change, right? First go in, find the fire and put it out. Now we're saying, okay, we're going to give up on that. We're going to go defensive. Everybody get out. Everybody get off the roof. We'll go to heavy streams, surround and drown. We're done. New strategy change. We're 20 minutes after we've arrived on scene, and we have 11 companies inside or on top of that structure. There's no face-to-face communications going on at all inside between the people, the captains. When they're told to leave, do the captains go to the guys and say, drop your nozzle, run for the hills? No. It's like everybody's leaving. And when we interviewed Graciano, he was not told to leave his nozzle and follow the line out. And Greg West and I had a very powerful interview with Enrique, just the three of us. Now, here's a 2-year firefighter sitting in a division chief's conference room with a battalion chief, and just the three of us. We're talking like human beings, and it was probably one of the most emotional little exchanges I've ever had with anybody. Here's Enrique's story real quick. We're inside the structure, right? He's come in through this door, he's wrapped around, and he's down one of the aisles fighting fire. Visibility's down to about 18, and smoke's down to about 18 inches off the ground. He's not told that we have to leave, but he kind of sees people are leaving. Is he listening to the radio? Most firefighters don't. We need to change that paradigm.
In fact, he didn't say anybody told him to go. He said, all of a sudden it got really quiet. I didn't hear anybody's breathing anymore, and I turned around and I couldn't see anything, but I knew I was all alone.
So now, he's got the nozzle. He starts duck walking back toward the check stands. And as he's pulling the hose line with him, right, big loop of hose, as he's pulling it, it's getting heavier and heavier. So now he's holding it by the bail to drag it behind him. He goes into that little alcove I told you about, where the last thing he sees, smoke's about 18 inches off the ground, the last thing he sees is the reflective stripe of one of the turnout pants of one of the firefighters kind of disappearing behind, they're all crawling out now, disappearing behind a check stand. He's coming this direction. He's about 12 feet away. As he goes, the visibility's poor. He doesn't know where to make that turn. And he keeps going until he kind of hits the front wall. When he turns that direction that he saw everybody going, he hits another wall. And he's hitting the side of that cooler that I was telling you about. Very disorienting feeling. He's clear that's the way to go, but now he's hit something. So he goes this other way and hits the wall again. He goes this way and hits a wall. And the only way where he doesn't hit something is back where he came from, and it's getting hot. He crouches down. You know what he's sitting on? He's sitting on a pile of spaghetti. He brought the nozzle with him. Who knows, had he left the nozzle there and followed the line out, he might not have been able to get past that line of spaghetti. He crouches down and he opens the nozzle because it's hot. What's that opening the nozzle do? Upsets the thermal layer, increases the steam, and it's worse than it was. So at that point, he hesitates. And this is where we say his window of opportunity is shrinking. He hesitates. He thinks he waited about 30, 45 seconds, maybe a minute, which seems like a lifetime because he cannot get himself out. His first call is to his truck company. We all heard it. Truck 88, Tillerman, Truck 88. We've heard guys, pass devices going off. They're talking on the radio because they're not moving enough. It wasn't directed at me. Kind of heard it. But he was directed at his company. So meanwhile, that was his first call. He didn't ask for help. He says, Truck 88, Tillerman, Truck 88. Then I'm having a conversation with the truck captain on the roof, the good truck captain, about get off the roof. And he says, you don't want us to get off the roof? Because if we don't get some holes cut in this, your heavy streams aren't going to do any good. What is the risk of leaving a company on the roof when we have nobody inside? If it's 1/2 of 1%, it's too much. Because once we've abandoned the interior fire attack, there's no reason to have anybody on the roof. So I don't even answer him back. But meanwhile, while him and I are having this discussion on the radio, Enrique is dying. He's laying in a fetal position on top of all that hose. He says that he sees visions of his mother. He sees visions of his family, the World Trade Center towers collapsing. We talked to a ghost. Greg and I talked to a guy that, for all intents and purposes, was dead. And there is no way he could get out. He starts calling for help. And you'll hear on the radio when he's calling for help that his voice will modulate and change just because he's being hit by debris. Have you thought about that? You're going to rescue a firefighter in a rapid intervention situation, and now they're covered with debris, medium to light debris. Have you thought about how you're going to get them out? There's some issues going on. We've made a lot of recommendations, and Greg will talk about a lot of those. Enrique's laying there. He's screaming for help. It's not making sense. I'll tell you what he says. He says, help, I need help. I'm on an 1.5 inch line from engine 90. We know he's not. He's on an 1.5 inch line from engine 100 that's at 180 degrees different side of the building. But at the command post, I don't hear that. To me, it sounds like I'm Enrique Graciano, I'm from engine 90, and that didn't make sense to me because he's from 88s, and I had dinner over there that night. I don't run out of that house, but I had dinner over there that night, and I know he's at 88s. I know Enrique. Didn't make sense. I wasn't sure if we were missing a firefighter from 90s or 88s, but I got a guy screaming, and he says that twice. The rapid intervention companies, and Greg will expand on that, but the rapid intervention companies know where 90s are, and they go down to try and help him. But that takes them way out of the picture. That's why the rapid intervention didn't go well. A rapid intervention company did well, but they were led astray. Now, this is from a guy who thought he was getting a line off engine 90 when his mental faculties were intact. Now, with an adrenaline dump, he's not intact. He could not feel, because of the fine motor skills and his heartbeats going too high, he could not feel the emergency trigger on his button, and he didn't press that button. He didn't think to take his glove off, suffer whatever burns you might suffer, and push that button. He probably still couldn't have felt it, because when your heart rate goes that high, and that's why we cover that part in the beginning, your fine motor skills go away. You probably can't do that. He did two things that saved his life. Saved the guy's life who saved him and a bunch of other people. One, because he was moving around, he manually turned his pass device on. He didn't think about that. We asked him, what made you do that? It was like automatic. Train as if your life depends on it, because it does. You need to act instinctively, and he did that. The second thing he did was he had his flashlight on. Two things that saved his life. Truck 88 goes out. Their apparatus operator running the company. Jody Garfield. All right. There's a guy with a girl's name. When his parents named him, they thought, well, we'll either name you Sue or Jody, and Sue was already taken, so they named him Jody. Hi, Jody. Jody Garfield, rightfully so, this happened in 2003, just a couple of months ago, was awarded the Medal of Valor by our department. Jody is running the company because his captain's running the division, theoretically. But you know he didn't have everybody. He gets to the door and asks the other firefighter, Robert Martinez, have you seen Enrique? Robert has taken his facepiece off, and they're at the door. He says no. Jody still had his facepiece on. Jody turns and bolts back in the building. Robert, now alone. Now Robert is trying to get his facepiece back on. He's standing in the doorway of that building, and the air is blowing so hard into that building because of the impending flashover that his helmet is buffeting from the wind, blowing into the structure. Unbelievable. Jody goes in, he comes in this way, and he starts heading it by the check stands to go into the grocery store to find Enrique. Back here, he hears Enrique's pass device. So as he's heading into the grocery store, he turns around, and he finds Enrique. Enrique describes that. That's very powerful. But Enrique is combative. Is he hypoxic? Is he out of air? No. If you run out of air, another reason for you to be combative. But he's combative because now he's starting to take him out, and he's taking him out the right way. But Enrique thinks they're not going the right way. Not that he has a sense of northeast, south, or west, or which way the door is, but Enrique said he is spent with adrenaline. He can't even lift his head. They're crawling out, and he says in his peripheral vision, he sees nothing but fire in the direction that they're going and all around him. You know what that fire is? That's the smoke all the way up through and into the attic that is already flashing over, already burning. The unburned hydrocarbons in that smoke has reached the ignition temperature, and up there is already catching on fire. So the place is already starting to flash over. And that's why Enrique is combative, because he thinks they're going right into the fire. They clear that door, and what we didn't know is that the engine captain from engine 100 was in there looking for his crew members too. And at one point at that podium in the post-incident analysis, he admitted that I was looking for my crew and I couldn't find them, and it came down to an issue of self-preservation. And he stumbled on a hose line, was too embarrassed to call for help, and followed a hose line out and came out after Enrique came out. And we never knew he was missing. Lesson there is leave the hose line, follow the hose line, but don't get, as a company commander, don't get into that environment where you're going to be forced to have to do that. Unless you have some catastrophic thing happen to the building, like a building collapse or something, then you need those skills to get out. Hands on the shoulders and all that other stuff. We talked about all this. Visibility goes to 0. The firefighter defaulted, train as if your life depends on it, went into basic non-thinking operation, called for help on the radio, had his pass device on, had his flashlight on. The lost company commander did none of that and lucked out. When the lost firefighters company effected the rescue, we never knew about it. That's not a good plan. And we'll talk about the lessons learned from that. The lost company commander lucks out, finds his way out, but his crew, because they didn't have a safe zone, when they came out, they didn't think any big deal that their captain was missing. And they didn't know he was still inside, because they lacked the discipline that this is a significant fire. When we come out, let's meet right here. So we know everybody's together. And if you don't see me, and I'm the captain, could you tell somebody? And that was one of the issues when Captain Dupuy died in South Central at that fire, was an issue for us, is that his company didn't know, his crew members didn't know that he was still inside either. 30 seconds after they leave, or less, the entire place flashes over, and it's fire stem to stern, floor to ceiling, door to door. Personnel accountability report after that is very frustrating, where I should be able to talk to 3 division supervisors and say, tell me you got all your people, and they have all their people. It didn't go that way, and we eventually went to a thing of it's every individual company we have to go through a check sheet and poll everybody. You know how long that takes? Meanwhile, Greg West and I are pretty convinced that we don't have everybody out. And I'm wasting another 5 minutes or more after we got Enrique out before we're even remotely sure that we got everybody out. And then we're not even sure. And no less than 3 engine companies report that they have a wagon battery ready to put in service. After we have this emergency traffic and we have a lost firefighter, they're trying to tell us that we got a wagon battery we can put into service for our little surround and drown game. Okay.
You're going to hear it. You're going to hear while we are confirming we've got everybody out. You're going to hear engine 83.
You can cover those 2.
Load the wagon battery. Engine 83, load the line, disrupting what we're trying to do. Why was he disrupting us? Because when Engine 83 reported to Division Charlie in the back of the building, they didn't lay a line. And when they got back there and took a look at the requirements for it and the ladder pipes going up, they knew they needed a water supply. And where was that captain when all the bad stuff was going on? He had his head down, he had his butt up in the air, and he's pulling 4-inch hose from his hose bed back to a hydrant. And he's not listening to the radio, he's not paying attention to what his job is because he's busy recovering from his mistake. I think that captain still doesn't know that we lost a firefighter here. I think he's still out of the loop. When we did our hot wash at the tailboard, when this was all over, he had no idea that we came so close to losing a couple people at this fire. No idea. One simple mistake, one miss on the basics, took him out of this incident, and all he did was make it worse for us for the rest of the fire.
You want to talk about rapid intervention, Greg?
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me go back. Okay. Like Rob said, he's running the tactical side of it. I've got, on my side of the Suburban, the rapid intervention channel and that one task force assigned to rapid intervention. When we knew that Enrique was lost, and I confirmed it with Rob on the other side, we launched rapid intervention. I sent them out on Channel 12 and told them that we had a firefighter lost. They'd been monitoring it, they already knew, and they were starting to move. Well, here's what they did when they got there. The engine gets there first, and they start pulling off equipment they may need for rapid intervention, lights, ropes, forcible entry equipment, things like that. Their light force gets assigned with them, and while the engine continues to take equipment off, and they start getting equipment off the truck now with saws and things like that, the truck captain goes around the building with a clipboard and his crew, and they kind of sketch out what they have and all the points of access, egress, and where the rigs are all parked. So they've got a good situation update of where everybody is. They confirm it at the command post off our worksheets, and they're good to go. They're ready, and they're standing adjacent to the command post as a group of 10, all set to go on rapid intervention. They monitor their channel, they monitor the TAC channel, they monitor that emergency traffic channel 6, and they monitor command. So they've got 4 radios, 10 people, a lot going on, they're ready to go, and when I launch them, they hear that we're missing a firefighter off of engine 90. And we know engine 90's in the alley, and we know that in fact Enrique took a hose line off of the Victory Boulevard 180 degrees out. So they go back to engine 90, and this is the part where we ran 2 separate fires, because I'm dialed into my radio and I'm just praying something's going to come up on channel 6, and it didn't, where we could talk directly to him without any other interference. Didn't happen. Listening to rapid intervention, they go back to engine 90, and there's no line coming off of engine 90 except the one that goes from engine 7 out to the street, back around. It did the whoop-de-doo, and they follow a line through that breezeway, down that aisle, and into that rolling steel fire door where the fusible link did what it was supposed to do. And imagine the radio message from your rescuers that say, we are stopped at a rolling steel fire door that's laying on top of an 1 3/4 inch line. We've got our saw, we're trying to cut our way through it. So he's hearing the tactical messages about we've got Enrique, we've got him out, and I'm listening to a whole different story that says we've got our firefighter trapped just on the other side of this door, we're effecting a rescue as quick as we can, and I can hear the saw running in the background as the captain's telling me about it. And that was the disconnect, the breakdown at the command post as far as rapid intervention. But it gets worse. It takes a chief to make it worse. Chaos, you know, chief has arrived on scene. God, we're being taped. The component that made it worse was I wanted a chief officer to oversee the rescue operation because I'm adding more resources to it. As soon as I launch rapid intervention, I get a task force out of staging, 93, not 39, 93. And they're going to back up the rescuers and back up rapid intervention. And then one of our battalion chiefs, Battalion 14, Chief Rodney Wilmot, shows up at the scene. Great brush officer. He's been involved all over California in brush. He shows up. It's midnight. Remember, he's been up about 5 minutes, 10 minutes responding to this. And he gets out of the car and he's putting his turnout coat and his bottle on. And I verbally say, Rod, thank God you're here. We've got a missing firefighter. I just launched rapid intervention with Task Force 73. You're going to take charge of the rescue. Your rapid intervention. You got Task Force 93 also assigned to back you up. That's a bad thing to do. The wrong thing to do, because he didn't know what the building looked like. He didn't know where anybody was. And mentally, he wasn't, he was geared up for a division assignment or, get one of the groups or something. And he gets this with absolutely no knowledge of the situation or the resources, how the building's laid out, where everybody is. But he takes it. He gets his radios dialed in, for the most part, and goes off to find Task Force 73. And the one radio message he gave that you'll hear on the tape is, Task Force 39 from Battalion 14, your rapid intervention report. Enrique's laying on the ground dying in there, and he's screaming at us. And when we talked to him in that room, we listened to the tape and we listened to that part, and he said, I gave up at that point, because when I heard Task Force 39, I knew for the whole fire that the truck was on the roof. If they had to work that hard on the roof, come down the aerial, and then go into a rescue mode, there was nothing left to help me. And that was a big mistake, and probably what I should have done is taken one of the BCs that was either interior or the safety officer who had a good knowledge of where everybody was and what was going on, and just reassigned them and put them in charge of it. So that's kind of the story of rapid intervention and how it went. Or didn't go.
That's that whole thing about when we had anomia about, I couldn't remember emergency traffic. It will affect everybody at your incident, not only your victim, but all the rescuers. So he took 93 and transposed it, and it had a significant issue. The lessons here are that firefighters will only call for help when all else has failed. We need to change that thought process. We need to make the window of opportunity. First off, don't get into that situation, but if you do, call for help immediately, and let's be embarrassed later, but alive. And then people involved in the firefighting operation, we know have the best chance to effect a rescue, just like Jody did. But the incident commanders have to know. So what we tell our people is, if you're going to go into Hell's Kitchen, let us know that you're going to do that. We also tell our other companies the difference between insubordination and independent action. Insubordination, you don't do what I ask you to do or direct you to do. And some people, what happened in this fire is Truck 39 did not get off the roof because they understand that we had another strategy change when Enrique was yelling on the radio that, no, we're not getting out and getting off anymore. We got to go get that guy. Well, they're not in a position to rescue Enrique. They're on the roof. So what do? They stayed on the roof, which he already said was safe. He puts himself in a safe position, and they cut more holes. And they're trying to help the atmosphere inside to make it more tenable for Enrique. And you'll even hear Jacqueline say that on the radio, that I tell him, okay, get off the roof after we do our PAR. He says, just to let you know, we were staying up here during the firefighter rescue. And so what we tell our captains, our engine captains down on the floor, that if you're not in a position to go make the rescue, put your company in a safe position and don't tell me. Because we're busy at the command post. I only need to know about people who are not in a good position. Because I need to know if my victim total is going to go up, and I need to send more people. So we tell our people, you go into Hell's Kitchen, I need to know. If you can't help with that rescue, then be at a doorway. Try and hold the fire in check. Be in a safe place, and don't tell me. Contribute to the fire. Don't contribute to my confusion. And then the incident commander, we have to be notified when other companies are attempting a rescue. Changing conditions have to be communicated by anybody. If the captains aren't communicating those conditions and you're a senior firefighter, then you should be communicating in those conditions. And we shouldn't get to that point. I've never had a problem. The higher you go in rank, the more cowardly you get. And I've never had a problem having somebody come out and say, Chief, you pulled us out too soon, or you pulled us off the roof too soon. I'm sorry, I get cowardly. When the badge turned from silver to gold, I really got this big yellow streak right down my back. And then company members have to account for each other as well as their company commander. And we have to empower our firefighters that, one, listen to the radio and help keep track of your captain when the captain is the one that's missing.
Let's go further on that. The only way to assure company accountability and zero visibility is by physical contact. You got to touch them. You got to know where they are when that smoke banks down. Or we're going to leave somebody behind.
And your officers have to give clear direction. And if you started that progress when you went in and said, here's our safety zone and here's how we're going to get out, then your people will follow. You'll save some lives. The change in tactics have to be communicated to everybody in the IDLH. And like we said, Enrique didn't know that. He didn't know. They just kind of started hearing less noise, so figured it was time to go. And then company commanders have to account for all of their people. And then don't wait to be asked, do you have all your people? And then count. As soon as you come out of that IDLH, you say, here's my flock. And I don't wait to be asked. I got all my people, Chief. That way, when somebody asks him, do you have all your people? We say yes. And nobody has to count heads then. We should account for each other like that. Lack of required fire flow, we talked about that. Deteriorating interior atmosphere. It's a loser. Unless in the beginning we got a lot of GPM and found that fire, that is not a winning fire. So you just need to, all we're saying is, and I'm not saying not to go inside either, but let's go inside and say, everybody's out. I'm having trouble getting to the fire. I'm using a thermal imaging camera. I see there's a lot of fire. We can't get these open. Not going good. Let's just get closer to the exit and still try to fight fire. Let's put ourselves in a safer position. We only know as firefighters one mode, and that's, Katie, bar the gate, here we come. Whether somebody's inside that needs help or nobody's inside, we don't know the difference. And we charge the same powerful way. All we're saying is now when no one's inside and we know the civilians are off, let's back off a couple of notches. Let's look at a safer risk versus gain scenario. The most immediate action when you get out is to account for your assigned personnel. If you're a supervisor, account for the people who are reporting to you. And then company integrity for us equals life. The only way you know everybody's there, and as much as we try to computerize it and GPS and everything else, it's people accounting for people. All right, here's the last segment. Again, what you'll see is Enrique is kind of in this little alcove. He's pulled the line back, and he's sitting on a pile of spaghetti. And you're going to, this is how it looks. Truck company over there, some other stuff. This is where the video matches what you'll hear.
Got heavy fire burning across both of them right now. Still got a good sound roof, though.
Roof division, Roger. Interior division, Victory IC. How's it looking inside or from outside? It's not looking too good. Are you ready to pull your companies out? 89s, if you want to set up for a potential ladder pipe, make sure you're in a position to do that. Interior division from Victory IC. Can you count for your companies inside?
IC from engine 90, we've just come out. Looking where we band, you need to pull the interior company off the second floor in the rear.
Roger. Engine 39, Division C, will you pull the companies out of the second floor in the rear? That's engine 39, engine 90, and engine 83. Engine 39, a copy, you're getting out now. Interior division from IC, pull your companies out now unless you've got more information to tell me.
It triggered us to get people out of there.
Division is backing out. Interior division, Division C, pull the companies out of the building. Pull your companies out of the building. Roof division, be advised, or pull the companies out of the building. Interior division, Division C, account for the companies that you have assigned. Roger, I see. Interior division is backing out.
Engine 83, we're loading the line.
Truck 88, cameraman! Truck 88, cameraman!
That's Enrique the first time.
Engine 83, get ready for a wagon bit. IC from roof, are you calling us off the roof? Is that all I copy?
Roof division, I see, yes. We'll go to a defensive attack, get off the roof.
IC from roof, I copy, but I've got a good strong roof. I've got no problems up here right now. We're going to heavy streams, you're not going to get any water on the fire.
Push the call for help. Give me an ID. Give me clear this channel. We need some help. Remember calling for help. Give me an ID. I need help. I copy, that's engine 90, firefighter Graciano. Firefighter Graciano! Interior division, Victory IC, your copy. We have firefighter Graciano needs help inside.
Task Force 39, Battalion 14, your rapid intervention report. What's your location?
Interior division, IC, did you copy? Have you accounted for all the members of Light Force 88?
Oh, to the engine 89, we're available out of Holy Cross. Can we help you anywhere up here?
Engine 89, you're on our tech channel. Members on tech 17, emergency traffic, emergency traffic. We have a firefighter trapped inside, firefighter trapped from engine, correction, Light Force 88. Firefighter Graciano, Victory IC, do you copy on 17? Do you know your location? IC, we have found firefighter Enrique, Graciano, he's outside. 88, engine 100, engine 7, engine 88. Account for your companies and report back. Division C, account for your companies. You had engine 39, engine 90, and engine 83.
I see from engine 83, we have a wagon in position in the back corner. Division B, ready to go when you're ready.
Here it's on scene on Victory and Woodley. I want you to account for the members that have got out of the building. I want to account for engine 39, engine 90, and engine 83 on Division C. Engine 90, that's it. All of Light Force 88 accounted for.
I see from engine 88, we have a wagon battery position on Division C of the building, ready to go.
88, Roger, stand by. I'm trying to account for the companies that we got all the companies out of the building. Light Force 88, account for the rest of your division. That's engine 100, engine 7, and engine 88. Account for them.
I see engine 7 has all their members.
Black unit, ID only.
Engine 7.
Engine 7, and you're out of the building?
Roger.
Roger, engine 88, give me a power.
Engine 90's got a wagon battery northwest corner, ready to go.
Engine 88, engine 100, give me a power. Victory IC.
Order, far.
Victory IC, engine 88 is accounted for.
100, engine 100 is outside the door, all present accounted for.
Roger, engine 39 and engine 83, give me a power. 39, Roger, engine 83, Victory IC, give me a power.
Victory IC from engine 83, all accounted for.
83, Roger. Roof division, Victory IC, we'll go ahead and we'll get off the roof.
Roger, I copy that. Just so you know, we were staying on as long as we had that fireman down. We're getting off now.
49, Roger.
Hey, I see from roof division. I've got...
Okay, that was the roof division talking about staying up here just long enough to give them some relief while they were doing the firefighter rescue. Chief Wilcox had to take off. He's got a place he really has to be at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up. We'll take about 5-10 more minutes and we'll be done here. So our conclusion, we talked about knowing we lost one firefighter and then finding that captain 2 months later through the post-incident analysis. And the critical lessons we learned by diving into this. We talked to and got written reports from every officer that was at the incident to put together their actions and learn from them in this nearly catastrophic incident. And we've talked about being able to bring about change without having to kill somebody to do it. And this was our final slide when we talked about risk versus gain. That sign that I worried about for 2 hours out there that it was going to fall down on somebody was the only thing left standing when they bulldozed the building. So within 2 weeks the building was, can you imagine what it would have been if we had lost a firefighter and to look at that and drive by it 2 weeks later? This was nothing to the company. It was fully insured. Probably at the point where we got to that fire and had that much fire in the attic, they were going to do the same thing that they did after us fighting for 2 hours and almost losing a firefighter there. So they were going to lose the building when the attic burned off of it, and all of that food down inside, whether we had covered it with salvage covers and plastic or not, probably would have been condemned by the health department. So we took a look at this and said risk versus gain. And then Chief Rueda took a look at it and he said, well, what is our risk management policy? And we all kind of knew, but we hadn't, I didn't know if I could articulate it, and I was the IC at the fire. So we went to work on that, and we came up with a risk management policy for all of our officers. And it follows the NFPA 1500, requiring that the IC integrate risk management into the command functions. And it's based on, like I said, NFPA 1500, And to paraphrase it all, we will risk much to save a life. And when we got to this fire, there were still people pushing shopping carts around in that market and had no idea that they had a room well involved in fire and a well involved attic going over their heads. So we will put firefighters in harm's way to risk a life. And just like you, we do it every day with occupied buildings. When there is no life at risk, but there is property at risk, you know, Rob talked about the fire where we lost Joe Dupuy, and all they had in there were pig's ears that they turned into dog chews and dog toys. But also what's in that building is the livelihoods of a lot of people in the community who work there, and that's quite a bit at risk. So we will take some risk and a managed risk to protect salvageable property. And then, of course, the final one is that we will take no risk when no lives and property are at stake. I go back to my 5 years in Hollywood and all the earthquake-damaged vacant buildings we had, that we would take no risk. When we discovered there were transients and homeless living in the buildings, it turned it around and we took significant risk in those buildings. Confirmed vacant buildings, we will manage the risk appropriately and not put any of our people in harm's way. And we've even taken it a step further now that when we initially arrive on the scene and when we transition command, we are now required as part of our command operational procedures to declare the strategy that we are involved in, so that when the first in captain arrives at the scene and gives a size up to the dispatch center, included in that size up is the fact that we are initiating an interior attack. And when the battalion chief comes on scene, the battalion chief will either confirm or change the strategy of we're going to continue with the interior attack, or we are going to pull everyone out and go defensive on this. And when I arrive on the scene as a division commander, it's the same thing. So we have to, intuitively we did that. When I assign a company, you know, take a line inside to the second floor, truck 39, go to the roof. Tactically, I'm declaring that aggressive interior attack, but now I have to stop and actually articulate what it's going to be. And when we transition command, we do the same thing now. So it makes me stop as a battalion or assistant chief and take a look at it and put that risk management policy into my thought process when I declare the way we're going to go on this building. So we've taken our risk management policy and taken it a step further by declaring how we're going to go on this fire. So you've seen the picture. That's what we were looking at the morning after the fire. And Rob and I worked a 72-hour shift over that weekend. So we have the fire Friday night. Saturday morning we went back, and this is what it looked like. And we started the measurements, we started all the pictures, and started the after-action activities actually the day after the fire. Vallarta comes in, and they salvaged what they could, found their safe, got all their money out, and within a couple of weeks, they bulldozed the building. You saw that, and that's what Vallarta looks like right now. And they have a bunch of entrances. It's a lot easier to get in and out, and it's sprinklered. So Vallarta took their smallest square foot grocery store with nearly their highest volume, lost it in a fire where we nearly lost Enrique Graciano, a captain and a rescuer, potentially the rapid intervention crew. And that's what they turned it into. This was a gain for them. This was not a loss. And when you look at risk versus gain, I will forever factor that picture into my decisions on the fire ground. And I'm telling you that Chief Wilcox and I got religion on this fire, and we didn't have this picture in the presentation until about 3 weeks ago. So nothing caps it off better than that picture right there. So that is our presentation.